have started watching. So I was telling Jake that How It's Made in its entirety is all on HBO Max now.
Is the show called How It's Made in its entirety, or are you watching a show called How It's Made, but you're watching it in its entirety?
The latter, because there's like 20-something seasons of just watching how things are made.
Boomers rejoice.
Me rejoice.
That's right. That's right.
But no, I've started I've kind of realized that I need some kind of wind down TV. So I've also started to watch history documentaries.
Nice. You are definitely aging before our eyes.
Not patiently.
The snake gift, the old snake gift.
No, but I was telling Jake, because did you know Caligula is not actually called Caligula? That's not his name.
What's he called?
He's called like Gaius Caesar Augustus Germanicus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
But do you know what Caligula means?
No.
It means like small boots. Like little booties.
Little
booties.
Small boops?
Boots.
Small
boots.
Oh, okay,
like
right.
shoes.
I heard boots or boobs, and I'm like, small boobs. All right, fair enough.
No.
Okay.
No, so...
So he has small feet?
No, I can't remember why. Okay.
Probably should have held that piece of information in your head.
When he was a kid and he was going around and all the legionnaires saw him and he had the small shoes and they just called him like little shoes.
They called the presumptive emperor little. They made fun of him. Legionnaires made fun of the presumptive.
Maybe it was with love.
That's a ballsy move.
Maybe it was with love.
Maybe
Did you not
it was.
have like a little nickname when you were a kid?
Oh,
yes. My grandfather called me Moonface because I had a big round face and I still kind of do. So, Face Luna.
I was picturing the guy, the moon face.
Face Luna. Thank you very much, Nonno. So, that's what I got called. That's great.
That's brutal.
That's great.
I had
Thanks
Jake
very
the
much.
Snake, which was cool.
Ooh.
But then Jake from State Farm came out, and now everybody to this day, I'm at Starbucks, like Jake from State Farm. Shut up! Like, you're a creative genius. I've never heard that before.
They write it on the cup.
Yeah,
like,
that's happened, and just. It's fine. You know what? People are trying to be light. Not everybody's a comedian. They're trying, so it's fine. But Jake the Snake was way cooler.
That is cool. Unless they think they're saying it in a negative way.
No, it's the
What's
wrestler.
What was the
Jake the Snake Roberts? So it was
cool.
I
didn't know that.
Yeah.
What was the snake gang from Fallout? What were they called?
Tunnel snakes.
Tunnel snakes.
Tunnel snakes. Yeah,
they rule. Tunnel snakes rule. Right?
Tunnel snakes rule. Yeah, they actually did unironically rule though. So like much respect to them. Like whatever happened to them, rest in peace. Because it couldn't have been anything good. Probably so not. Yeah.
I was Goldilocks.
Ooh,
So.
That's brutal.
Yeah, my sister's.
Is this because you had no hair?
Yeah. Also, really, the double whammy of the fact that my sister's blonde, so she's Goldilocks, and I was Goldilocks.
Oh,
that's
no.
That's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
That's like, that's going to give you some complexes, like multiple complexes.
Yeah.
Well, British people are pretty brutal, right?
True.
Like,
they've got to. Did you see that thing where like Prince William or whatever was named like 24th sexiest man in the UK something?
He was top 10. He was
That's
top
right,
10.
top 10. I saw this tweet that was like, does the word sexy mean something different in the UK? Like chips versus fries or something? Like, how are we using this word at this point?
Hang on, I'm Googling
Was it like Piers Morgan on there as well as being like number 40 or something?
Jeremy Clarkson was named number 1.
I mean, yeah, okay. What do you say to that list? What do you say to that list at that point? I mean, clearly they're going for something that's not really that same definition as everybody else. You know what I mean?
I mean, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that it was a poll that was conducted by married dating site Illicit Encounters.
Oh, so it's
this
one of
is like
those.
the time when we like cited a survey from like casino.com or whatever that was just like
top favorite
total
protagonist
nonsense.
in video games from casino.com or something.
Casino Royale. Oh my god.
So we really deserve what we get when we cite sources like that.
I'm sorry,
really.
Baldilocks.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I will never call you that again.
It's, you know what?
Let's work that into the thumbnail, Eric.
You know
the
what?
title, Eric.
I can laugh about it now, but a few years ago I did have alopecia.
Which is not a laughing matter.
Well, no, it's not a laughing matter, but I have to cope through humor. And I had like stress-induced alopecia, and when I had like this little thing of hair, like a a bunch of hair missing at the back. I was like, no one tell my dad, because I don't want to be Goldilocks ever again.
No, for sure.
But it's okay. It's all back. It's good.
Good.
We're
Brutal.
good.
Very
We're
nice.
Anyway, hi everyone. Welcome to Friends Per Second. I was
Yeah,
trying to
what
think
is
of
this?
some. Yeah.
Episode
46.
46.
46. Yeah, we're getting ready for Summer Game Fest.
Yes.
We're all gonna be out in LA
Mm.
in person again.
Another
Gonna be
one
fun.
of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really stacked, I haven't really spoken about this on my own channel yet, but it's a really stacked couple of days. Like I have 4 straight days, essentially back-to-back bookings.
Oh yeah.
Of mainly hands-on. Like there's some showcases and like 1 or 2 hands-off demos, but like mainly it's just playable stuff. And there's a lot more than last year actually. I'm not sure if you guys feel this way,
Definitely.
but definitely
Like I wasn't
a lot
able to fit
more.
everything.
I had to turn away not quite a bit of stuff, but definitely some stuff that I would have liked to have had room for. So I'm not sure what that means as an overall indicator of industry success or health versus the fact that, well, now that everyone knows that Summer Games exist, publishers are on board with it. There's no E3 lingering in the background, potentially, whatever.
Yeah.
Publishers are like, okay, Summer Games Fest is
This
what
is
it
it?
is.
Okay.
And they've kind of gotten ready for it in advance and they're ready for it. And so there's quite a bit. And I definitely expect that you'll see, there's some cool surprises coming. I can say that already. And I'm really excited about quite a few things that we're going to get to play. So
Yeah, me
it's
too.
going to be rad. Yeah.
I don't have as much hands-on time as you guys because I'm doing obviously Gamespot
A million
commitments,
things.
Giant Bomb stuff. Yeah, at one point someone from our work was like, "Hey, can you go on this podcast during Summer Game Fest?" And I was like, "No,
Nope.
no, I can't." But thank
I
you
can't do
for
that.
asking.
Sure.
But I'm getting to talk to some fun people. I'm getting to the games that I'm booked in to see. I'm very, very excited about. But the thing is that like my hosting stuff is up until the Sunday night, so everything I've got to basically try and cram everything in on the Monday, which is you know, the last day of a convention is famously the best day of the convention to go see everything because no one's tired and everyone is still
And
raring
also the
to go.
presenters don't give a fuck at that point. They're like, yeah, whatever, here's a controller. You're like, what do I do? They're like, listen,
worry about
just
it.
Just don't
figure
break
it
it.
out,
Don't
okay?
worry about
Just don't break it.
I just want to go see.
Can I film this screen as I play? They're like, do whatever you like, man. It's fine. Like,
I just want to see Day of the Devs. That's my big thing. That's
Okay,
always
yeah.
my favorite stuff every year.
So for people who don't, what is Day of the Devs?
So Day of the Devs is now it's a non-profit. It was founded by Double Fine and I Am 8-Bit, and it's basically they get a bunch of indie devs to submit games that are then vetted, and then they are put on in showcases where people can like go and actually play them. There is like they do like in San Francisco because that's where Double Fine is from. They like rent out a theater. They just did one at MoMA over GDC. And they have these big cool showcases, like in person during the day that people can go to. And then at nighttime, they did like this cool show on stage, which was awesome. But like typically my favorite thing from every Summer Game Fest has been a Day of the Devs. It's just that it's like where the weird cool stuff
yeah,
is.
for sure. Yep.
So if you don't have that
So,
appointment, I would
Yeah, I gotta get on that.
recommend that you do.
I'm excited for Summer Game Fest just because it feels different than E3, at least for me. It's like the workload is there, but it's like the way everything is laid out, it's very different. It feels like a college campus where you're like walking around with your backpack and everybody's got their backpacks. And you see people you know, but like there's room to like stop and have a cup of coffee and like, you know, check up on your notes and like get your shit together or film or something. And it's cool.
I didn't realize.
I agree.
God, yeah. And it's also like I didn't realize it like was an extra day. Because I think in my head it's like, oh, it's just
yeah, that's
Friday
true.
to Sunday. But yeah, no, it goes up until the Monday.
Yeah, the whole thing is expanding. Like it's like another day. I think it's like a
Yeah.
bigger space. I don't know for sure, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean,
It's
that
good.
cool campus where they have it, it's sort of like I don't know, like they're unlocking a bit every year. Like it just
Yeah.
kind of gradually
Yeah,
just
true. It
grows
does seem
out.
like that, doesn't
growing.
it?
Yeah.
You're right. It is like the base upgrades over time. Jeff Keighley's leveling it up. Yeah, no, look, it's a really great time. And yeah, right. I think that point about pace is really good because I think you know, E3 is this crazy, or was, I should say, rest in peace. It's just insane event, 2 massive halls. Everyone is there. There's a billion bookings.
So loud.
It's just it's so much, right? And I think that also comes through in your coverage, which feels quite breathless, you know, because it's like you just have so much to churn through. It's really hard to like sit with things and kind of just like really play something, because you're on the floor playing things at E3, but there's like so much like this cacophony of noise around you all the time, and there's 50 people behind you. It's just hard to kind of like sit there and really sit with a game and play it and you know, just give it your full attention. Whereas Summer Games is smaller, it's more intimate, it's less crazy, and so it does, I find, result in better hands-on sessions, and I've liked it for that reason.
Plus embargoes,
I do miss
as well. Like, I think for people out there listening too, there's going to be like almost staggered, like there's going to be things that we play at Summer Games Fest that we can immediately be like, this was cool, but then a lot of games have embargoes, so it's like everybody can go to the event, play these things, come back, prepare coverage, talking points, again, stuff like
that results in better coverage. Like, it really does, because we can actually think about it rather than just like blurting out the first thing that comes into our brain and, you know, then clicking publish. So
like doing show floor video. What's up, guys? It's me, Jake, here at E3 2016.
I'm
currently walking from hall 1 to hall 2, and it's I'm on minute 25 of that journey. You know, I'm nearly at the end. Like, that fucking hallway.
Oh God, that hall. I'm gonna interject actually, because the user question that I picked out, I thought was gonna like end this segment, but I think it's actually going to be quite additive. So remember, contactedfriendspersecond.com. This is from EV4. Hello, EV4. Hi, I think you guys are cool, and I admire you guys a bunch.
You just have to get to know us better, that's all. We'll set you straight.
Don't worry about it.
Cool is not the right word, I would say. At least
keep listening, you'll see.
Like, definitely not.
The 3 of you are my favorites when it comes to games industry stuff, from reviews to tastes, so it's pretty awesome that you podcast together for the fun of gaming and games industry stuff, and even sometimes talk about cool nerdy stuff that isn't gaming. Then Evie puts in like a really nice like compliment for all of us, and thank you, but it's long, so I'm going to cut it, but it's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Evie. Appreciate it.
Anyway, my question is, as people engaging in the space of gaming media, do you guys feel like you miss E3, or rather those really cool press conference events? Personally, it was a personal dream of mine to one day go to E3, but sadly, as it fell apart and more companies instead opted to do video directs and such, and while I still like watching the live streams, I miss those cool press conference moments that would give you chills because of a really cool reveal or of a trailer or gameplay, or even just the way they presented things to a live audience, like having Keanu come out for Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've definitely said this multiple times, but like, E3 was amazing, incredible. It will be, there's so much cynicism towards it, but I really believe every year that goes past, it will be remembered more and more fondly. People are like, oh, I wish we could go back to that, like 10 years from now. The nostalgia goggles will be very strong. But having been there multiple times, it was incredible. It was also a life goal of mine to go to E3. I remember watching it when I was a kid. And I just dreamed about the opportunity. And when I finally got to go, it just felt unreal. And it delivered on every one of my expectations. And it's not one of those things where you get there and you're like, it's all right, I guess. You get there and you're like, fuck, man, this is better than I could have imagined. This is incredible. I never want to leave. Except you do want to leave because you're exhausted. But yeah, it was amazing. And not just the showcases, which were wonderful. And it was so good, especially the Sony ones. No one put on a show like Sony at those events with this big old theater hall and like live choir in front of you, just so much shit. It was incredible. And so yeah, we don't have that anymore, which is a bummer, and I definitely miss it. And I will never be convinced that E3 that Summer Games Fest is a downgrade. Like, I will never be convinced that Summer Games Fest is not a downgrade. It's nice in its own way, don't get me wrong.
Different.
Definitely some different for sure. But net, if you were to ask me, like, which gun to head, which it's got to be, I'm like E3 every time, baby. No question at all. Like, warts and all, E3 was amazing, you know. And it would be. It's a shame that it's gone for sure.
Yeah, it really had E3 had the sexiness, you know. It had like the glitz, it had the excitement, it had all that. It had the legendary status. And it's like, as much as we had a lot of those moments, those memorable moments where you have chills and ooh, that big announcement when they did that and the curtain came up or whatever, those are great. But equally, it was kind of fun to like laugh at the cheesy stuff. I mean, there's always like the cringe compilations and stuff like that, right? But I don't know, it was kind of funny. Like, it was always funny to see like both ends of the top end of the gaming industry, where it's like, we're spending all this money, look how cool this is, and then it's like, we're spending all this money, look how out of touch and goofy we are.
Yeah. Respect to that. I miss it a lot.
That's the thing. I like E3 and Summer Game Fest for like very different reasons. I like Summer Game Fest because it is more chill. It is. I prefer to work that show, like just in terms of it's still packed and you're still busy and everything, but it's not, pulling all-nighters E3 style because everyone was rushing to do the same thing and get the same thing out. But like E3 had like, because I went I think 8 times. Was very, very lucky. I went a lot. And it was wild, just the scale of it. Just how big those booths were. And, 2K would always have like a massive statue that they would make bespoke and then wheel it out all around the world. And Nintendo would theme their booth. And then
Nintendo booths were crazy.
The Nintendo booths were always ridiculous.
They were like half of one of the exhibition halls was like Nintendo.
The Zelda one felt like prototype Nintendo World. Like it
honestly, it was so ridiculous. And I remember seeing like the lines for that as well, to people to play Breath of the Wild. The lines stretched for like 3 hours because the demo that you could play was like the entirety of the plateau. And they wouldn't kick you off. Yeah. Like you could just keep playing. So people were on there for so long.
One of the cool things about working at Gamespot during that time is because we had a booth, which meant that we got to go in during loadout because we had exhibitor badges.
That's cool.
Nice.
And so going in the day before and seeing everything, because they would cover it in like plastic. And they would cover
like the
it
Christmas
in
presents.
Yeah, they would cover it in like garbage bags to make sure that like logos didn't leak or game reveal didn't leak. But I remember going in early and I was at the Nintendo booth and we were right next to it, and some very kind Nintendo employees let us go in and play stuff a little early. And so
that's cool.
It was really nice.
Doug Bowser himself
hooked
you up.
But that's the thing, like that's how I met Miyamoto. He was in the corridor at E3 and I just walked past him.
Just handing out random high fives to people. Yeah. He's like, hey, I'm Miyamoto. What's up, everyone? Yep. You get one. How you doing?
Like,
that's how it goes. It really was like, I went knowing nobody.
Yeah.
I went covering everything as a single person. I've went running an entire team. I've like done all of the different angles of E3, and like I've done it broke. I've done it with literally no money, and me at E3 being like, I'm so hungry. I gotta find an hors d'oeuvre somewhere. So it's like a very interesting little like spot in career milestone. But I agree with Ralph where it's like it is going to be looked back as like, man, that was a thing.
That was a thing we had.
Whether you were there or whether you were watching it on like G4 or whatever your equivalent was or YouTube, it was cool. It was video game Christmas. You remember like taking off work for it?
Well, that's the thing. Like I was in the UK, so it meant like staying up super, super late to watch everything.
Yeah.
But no, I like the way that Summer Game Fest is growing though, and it's not trying to chomp off too much every year. It is still a manageable show.
Yeah.
It's got some good shit. I'm excited for this year. And I'm interested to see if like, because obviously Jeff has been involved in E3. I wonder if he would let it get to the size and scope of E3, or if he will keep it that more like confined experience, but just, gradually let more and more people in. I think the one thing that E3 had that's like definitely missing at this point, like talking to some friends of mine who are in like the business side of things, where it's like E3 was this business hub and Summer Game Fest doesn't really offer the same, like there is no real networking thing for B2B.
I can definitely see Jeff adding that. I don't see him adding like a consumer component because the logistical challenge and the scaling up of that is so gigantic and the risk involved. Yeah. But if you would have like a day, like a whole area devoted to networking and like a networking program and whatever else, I could definitely see that happening because like Jeff's a savvy business dude. Like he knows how to work those angles. And I think that would definitely make a lot of sense for him and his style. But do I see him doing consumer stuff? No, which I think is a bit of a shame. But at the same time, like there's other consumer stuff, right? There's Gamescom, which is cool.
PAX.
And there's PAXs, which are always great.
Remember when PlayStation had one?
Well,
I never went.
Nintendo are about to do one in Sydney, actually, in the end of August, September.
Dude, if that's the one that was at PAX West last year,
yes, it's the same.
Awesome.
Okay, well, I'm going. I'm excited.
like-
So there's that happening.
It was so
yeah,
fun.
pumped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, and I mean, Xbox had FanFest stuff too, and it's like,
Yeah.
I kind of like that, you are taking your destiny into your own hands a little bit there when it comes to, especially if you're a platform holder. But I do miss just being able to like, oh, I'll go to Nintendo and I'll go to PlayStation, and
These were good. They were the best of times. They were the blurst of times.
stupid
You
monkey.
Stupid monkey. Yep.
What is that from?
Yep.
The Simpsons.
The Simpsons.
Okay.
The monkeys and the typewriters.
Oh god, that's right. That's deep in my brain.
It's there.
Maybe I'll start
It's
watching
there.
The Simpsons again instead of my.
Ooh, that's a good
history
idea, to be honest.
documentaries.
The Conan era.
Well, that's the thing, because every time when all the Conan stuff was going around, everyone was just posting like great Simpsons clips, and I would just watch them.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
The Planet of the Apes musical bit, which I saw doing the rounds on Twitter.
Still the best.
Oh God.
Did you guys see the new one yet?
Flawless.
Did you guys see the new?
No,
Kingdom
I'm
of
so
the-
excited to watch it.
Yeah.
I actually have. I've watched number 1 and 2, but I haven't watched 3. So I want to do like the whole
Hell
thing.
Yeah. Hell yeah! I want to talk about
Um,
movies more later in the podcast. We
Oh.
have,
Yes,
we have stuff
definitely.
that we can.
Furiosa chats.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm going to see it tomorrow, but I
Okay,
have
cool.
I have a
Alright, we won't spoil anything.
No
TV
spoilers.
chat for you guys.
Yeah, cool. Cool, absolutely.
But EV4,
Yeah.
thank you for your question.
Yeah.
I guess like in terms of this week's episode, we've got Summer Game Fest. Like there's a bunch of different stuff going on. It's kind of like a grab bag of news because
Yeah.
there isn't really one big thing dominating the headlines unless something happens after we've recorded this. We're recording this on Tuesday, so don't
Sorry.
no one do
Yep.
anything. PlayStation
Crazy.
will have their showcase. TBD, not that if that's going to be a big deal or not, but we'll see.
Yep.
What else is going on? Like CoD is officially coming to Game Pass. Woke
Yeah,
up
how
this
about
morning.
that? I feel like we were just talking about like, is it gonna? I don't know what's gonna happen. And here we are, the
Yeah.
next episode.
I don't know.
It's official.
I'm like really stunned. I never would have guessed that they'd, well, not guessed obviously, but like I would have bet big money against them doing this. So if anyone hasn't heard the news, yes, the new COD is Black Ops 6 and it's going to be on Game Pass day one. Like it's just, that's it. That's what they're doing, the thing that everyone was like, will they or won't they? It's like, they're doing it. And I would have bet very big money against this because there's just a lot of revenue that you sacrifice when you do this. But maybe it's not because they see it as, hey, people are going to sign up for Game Pass and they're going to forget about it. And rather than giving us, 60 or 70 upfront dollars, we'll get that money over 7 months, I guess, plus the microtransactions that will happen when you get that install base up and yada, yada, yada. I don't know.
You know
To
what it
me,
feels like?
it's-
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. You know
Go
what
on.
that feels like to me? That feels like trying to build like an online following by just doing giveaways. Where it's like you get them numbers
oh my
up.
God.
You get the
That
numbers
is
up, but do you
so-
build a holistic,
Wow.
real, genuine community? I don't know.
Oh my God. That is like, you're saying that to a group, like to a YouTuber as well. Like, because I know that is how YouTubers used to build their careers
Oh, yeah.
exactly that way. Like
Yep.
they used to build their channels on the basis of Amazon gift card giveaway.
Yep.
Make sure you leave a comment below, blah, 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 right? You're right, actually. It kind of does. Okay. It's probably a bit harsh, but I think I
Yeah.
know what you're saying in that the general vicinity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. It for me personally, it feels like a bit of a roll, like a last roll of the dice for Game Pass, because we've heard about how much it's sort of plateaued over the last little while. Like it's kind of been 2 years really flat. And obviously Microsoft's first party offering on that has not been great. And you can't really predict the third party offering either. Like you can't reliably put your Game Pass money down and know exactly what's coming each month. It's almost like a lucky dip.
Even
right?
on their end, like Pal World, I'm sure that took them by surprise too.
Totally.
They were like, "Oh yeah, we have that on this." Yes.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
right.
I think,
So
like
for me, it's
Manalords
like,
too, right? Like Manalords.
yes, Manalords is also on there, and that still sold 2 million units, by the way, which is like insane that it's done that well. But yeah, I mean, this feels like they really want to get Game Pass growing. There's no more powerful growth vector for Game Pass than this video game, other than putting Grand Theft Auto 6 on there on day one, which obviously is not going to happen. But there would be no single better way to grow Game Pass and to really test what are the limits of its growth potential than to put this video game on there. So, I mean, I wouldn't have guessed that they'd do it. but they are doing it. And okay, that's an interesting experiment. I'm interested to see how that goes.
You did a good job of explaining kind of like what I was feeling, but didn't
Sure.
have the intelligence to explain.
I know what
because
you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
It's like, well, they have tried everything. They've built up, they've added value to the subscription, like older games, just a bunch of games. They did the big, quote unquote exclusive blockbusters for Game Pass, like a Starfield. Now this is the biggest thing that they can do. You're right. The only other thing would be Grand Theft Auto 6, but that's like not happening. So this is interesting to see how this works. I hope that Black Ops 6 is weird like the first one, because then that would make this all even funnier, where it's like we put this weird trippy FPS on here. I don't know if it's going to be, but
I'm so
I mean, COD is
interested.
COD.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean, COD's a juggernaut, right? But like, what realistically, what's the split between PC, PlayStation, and Xbox players?
I'm going to guess, and this is total guess, but I'm going to guess at this point it's like 60% PlayStation, 20% Xbox, 20% PC. As a total like
Shot in the
guess.
dark.
I have no idea. But like that feels about right given the overall contours of the marketing of like game sales, especially COD, which is a console game.
Yes.
It's definitely a console game. And the COD community moved over to PlayStation last generation after like Sony basically like stitched that up with all its exclusive deals and whatever. So I would not be, but there's still that holdover on Xbox who play it on Xbox, like that American audience who are really into it.
Yes.
And so I definitely feel, if anything, it's like 60% PlayStation, 30% Xbox, 10% PC, because it's just not a PC game. Maybe Warzone's different to that. I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, so I think your question is obviously along the lines of what are they actually sacrificing?
Yeah.
Because you're still going to get all those PlayStation sales. Of course, they're also going to buy it at 60%, let's say. And then you're still going to get some of your Xbox and your PC people who are going to pay for it regardless. Let's say, let's say 50% of those consumers pay for it still. So maybe you're giving up 20% of your overall revenue base and you're trading that for the potential of that ongoing revenue and building up Game Pass over time. Maybe that's the broad math. Again, total guess.
Especially because there's one coming out the year after that.
And the year after that.
So it's like, all right, we missed a year, or we did a weird gamble for 1 year, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'm just so interested to see how it plays out for them, because it does just feel like this grab to get people on Game Pass, and like I'm really, really intrigued to see how it plays out, because it does feel like it feels really weird. Like it makes all the sense in the world for them because they own like COD, but I don't know. Could you imagine if Diablo 4, and obviously that release came after the acquisition or before the acquisition, but it's like if Diablo 4 just launched on Game Pass? Like it eventually went there, right? But like
it eventually went there, yes, exactly.
Day one, like it just,
and that was huge. That was huge for Game. I don't know how big it was for Game Pass growth, but it was definitely a very big shot in the arm for Diablo. Like Game Pass immediately became the most played Diablo 4 platform. Or Microsoft, I should say, like Microsoft platform.
Well, did you see the Dead Island thing from the Embracer news?
No.
Where it's like I'll have to find out the actual like numbers, but it was like 8 million through, but like 6 or 7 of those million were on Game Pass or something.
Oh, sure, I understand.
And it's
a game for it. Like I used to think that Game Pass game was like a very derogatory term, and I don't know if is it still, but like there are games that now I feel where I'm like, oh, it's worth just kind of downloading and playing for a few hours and seeing what's up.
Yeah, and that's for me personally. I've always looked at Game Pass, and it's always sat uncomfortably to me that brand new games would arrive day one on Game Pass, right? I've really like don't get me wrong, it's very good for the consumer for sure, but I've always wondered like, is that how this should be? Like, is that actually going to be the best end result for the overall sustainability of game development and studios and whatever else? I don't know. For me, I think these services should be really great back catalog places where after a game's been out for a year plus, then they go on there and that's how you can play your back catalog. Cool. But the brand new stuff, I don't know. I don't like that idea. I know they're trying to condition consumers towards this future.
Yeah.
Like, but like you look at Spotify right now, like the music industry is not better off because of Spotify. You know, it's just it's not.
I will
and,
always
like,
bring up Netflix and The Gray Man and how much money they spent on that massive movie that I watched, and it evaporated from my brain and everybody's brain instantly.
I watched the
I wanna watch the J-Lo,
I watched
yes.
it. So I watched the
the robot
J-Lo
one?
Atlas movie. Her character's name is Atlas, and the movie is so forgettable that I couldn't remember what it was called to put it in Letterboxd to log it.
It's so great.
It's
But
shocking, that film is.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But like that's the thing, you can make movies and TV shows as content because the costs for them are like the cost of making a AAA video game at this point is insane versus you can still make a TV show or a movie with a significantly reduced budget versus making a AAA game. Obviously, if you're making a James Cameron movie, that's still huge, right? But you can put together a small TV production or a small movie or whatever at a reasonable budget. But there's just a lot of content churn on those platforms. Like it's that old line of like, it's not art, it's content. And I think video games are kind of immune from it becoming that because of the prohibitive costs of game development. But I do worry that consumers expecting all this stuff day one for $10 is just not really sustainable given the costs of that development. So like, I don't know. I've always it's always sat uncomfortably for me. And I'm like, it must be sustainable on some level, right? Because Game Pass is profitable. That's what we're being told. We're not told it's making a loss. But how much are developers sacrificing in order to prop up that model? I don't know the answers to that, right? Interestingly, Edmund, a member of my team, he reached out to about a dozen game makers to ask them like, how are you feeling about publishing your games on Xbox? And one of the things that came back from a few of those developers was the idea that it's not worth putting your game, and they're smaller game makers, by the way, AA and indie. And they're like, it's not worth putting your game on Xbox unless you have a Game Pass deal. Because Xbox consumers are essentially conditioned now to expect their games on Game Pass. So if you're going to port your game to Xbox and expect to make your money back from sales alone, it's probably not going to happen. It's not worth it. So again, look at how Microsoft has conditioned those consumers. And sure, it's a smaller sample size. Maybe other developers disagree with that, and that's fair enough. But the ones that Edmund spoke to, that's what came back. Interestingly, if you're interested to read that whole thing, that's on the Patreon right now. I'm not spruiking the Patreon. It's free to everyone, by the way. It's not behind a paywall, so just go and grab it if you like. But really fascinating insight about how Game Pass has shaped consumer behavior specific to the Xbox platform, to the point where developers don't want to port a game unless they get that Game Pass deal to lock in their revenue.
I wonder what
I don't know.
Because you would get, I assume, a lump sum for signing a game with Game Pass. But I wonder what other benefits being a part of that. Like, I was reading the, if you don't read the Game Discover Co. newsletter, is fantastic. I was reading the Manlords one earlier today, and he was basically saying that, like, it was the most wishlisted game on Steam, and then they signed with the publisher super late because guy who made the game was just like, I don't want to be replying to press emails, I don't want to be emailing out keys, I don't want to be doing tags on Steam. And so like he signed with the publisher specifically so that they could take all that busy work. I do wonder if being part of the Xbox like Game Pass deal does kind of give you a leg up in terms of discoverability. Obviously you get here are the games coming to Game Pass like blasts and stuff, but I wonder if they also kind of help you out in a little way, like in terms of visibility, because that catalog, as with all catalogs, like Netflix, PlayStation Plus, every single catalog now is an absolute disaster. There's too much stuff. It's not curated very well. And so I wonder if you have a pal at Xbox who's like, okay, I'll give you placement on front page.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, well, at the very least, you get a shout out when you get added to the list. Yeah. If you're a game, you're out there to have like that image of all of the games that are coming in that drop, and you get that upfront profiling. I think for games that are multiplayer focused, it's a huge leg up because a lot of the barriers to entry for a game like Back 4 Blood, for example, which was not day one Game Pass, as I recall.
God, I forgot about
that.
Outriders
was, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's a co-op shooter. and you want to play that with your friends. And so that kind of really makes a lot of sense for Game Pass because, yeah, then your friends might be willing to like spend $10 and have a crack at something just cause rather than having to spend $70 on it, you know? So I definitely see that providing a lot of amplification opportunity on that front. Other than that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, most of the developers that I've heard from speak positively about. That's the thing. Musicians fucking hate Spotify. They rag on it endlessly. They hate it, right? But game developers don't really complain about Game Pass that much, or publishers don't complain about it that much. Like they might say the margins have been shrunk a little lately or whatever, but they don't really whinge about it, I found. I don't see a lot of negative sentiment. So my guess is on balance, they view it positively, you know?
I wonder if that depends on how big you scale to, though. Like if you are an indie and this is kind of like a guaranteed success because you are getting that lump sum, you're getting like visibility and whatever. But yeah, I think if you get past, like, I wouldn't call Outriders a success. Like they didn't.
Hell no,
they didn't
I don't think
get
that game is actually profitable to this point. Like all these years later.
And
so
it's more like a scalable issue in terms of whether Game Pass is worth it for you as a developer.
Yeah.
And then of course there's the outliers where you have a breakout hit and it doesn't, you know.
I've found myself just as a consumer just enjoying Game Pass more when I see a game going viral or like some creative indie game and I go, oh, and then I look and I go, oh, it's on Game Pass. Nice. Almost incentivizing me, like giving me that little kick out the door to like really go and play it because it's right there.
Is there? So you know how on streaming services, like I don't want to have to scroll through every single one to see if the movie that I want to watch is on there. There is an app called Just Watch. You just type in what you want to watch. It tells you where it's streaming. Do we have that for PlayStation?
Sounds
Epic
like
Games?
A good business idea.
No one
like
take
a good
it.
business
No one take it. I said
That's right. Yeah.
But
what I do think it's kind of interesting that we've had these services for a while now. But okay. From the developers that Edmund spoke to or whatever, they sort of said audiences are being conditioned to want their games from Game Pass. Okay, Sony though has their PS Plus and extra tiers and whatever else. Ubisoft have their subscription platform, as does EA. I'm trying to think if there's any other. I think they're the only ones.
Ubisoft kind of has one, didn't they?
That's what I said. Yeah, Ubisoft has one.
I didn't hear you.
EA's in Game Pass Ultimate?
It is only when like the games become like have been out for a while. It goes into their second tier, and the second tier is in Game Pass. Yes.
And was Ubisoft Plus in there too?
I actually think it might be at this point. Yes, I think it's the same deal where they have like a premium tier, whatever. But my point overall is that like with the music industry, all of us would have like a Spotify account, right? All of us listen to music on Spotify. That's how we do it. Yeah. That's how we get all our music. And everyone, I think that is how the entire industry has moved over to that. It doesn't really feel quite the same with video games. And I don't feel like it's not tending toward that either. I don't know. I just feel like the video game ownership idea has been surprisingly resilient.
But I can see it for casual audiences, absolutely. Almost like again to bring it back to movies, where now a lot of people who go to the movies here and there now only go when Avengers 4 is in theaters. So that's it. And I see, especially talking about how you heard from developers, where their players are conditioned to have stuff on Game Pass. So I almost like can see a future just knowing some casual players where $70 is already a tough sell for a game. So I see a lot of them only going out when it's like, oh, okay, new Madden or Grand Theft Auto, like something that they know, like the heavy hitter that they plunk down for.
Right.
So right. I could see like the larger, that the one that we don't talk about a lot, like the casual people.
Sure.
That kind of going that way.
Yeah, I guess so. It's definitely possible. I think as well there's like also a different mindset around like sales, because like video games can be really heavily discounted really often. Yeah. And so that a lot of people just wait for sale and then they will grab a game for $5 and it's like, point. Okay, cool. Yeah. Versus like a movie, if you see a movie for sale at $5 in a bin, you don't really care, like, because you just don't really buy physical movies anymore. I do, by the way. I love them.
Hell yeah.
But most people don't, And
I was going to say, we've been conditioned to devalue movies in a different way, though, because it'll be out in theaters and then I can wait 3 weeks to a month and it'll be...
I know, it's so bad.
Or you can watch it on TikTok.
Yeah.
in a
But,
thousand,
like,
in a
I
thousand
mean,
clips.
In 90 different clips.
Yeah.
someone uploaded the entirety of challenges to Twitter the other day, like the whole
Sure.
film. And I was like,
I remember June 2 got uploaded the exact same way. With some really good. That was when the GIF game began. I was like, finally, we're here.
I'm gonna watch Megalopolis via Instagram reels on the subway.
Apparently, it's so bad.
I can't wait. It looks
I
fucking awesome.
can't wait. I want to know if they're gonna do the IRL person bit
yeah.
in every theater.
There's
you hear
no
about
way.
this, Ralph?
No, what is this?
So
So the
there's
movie, you can explain it. You can explain it better.
There's a point in the film where, is it Adam Driver's character? I
Yeah.
don't know. Talks to a person, and then at the screenings they've been having, they had an actual person come out and stand in front of the screen and look up at Adam Driver and like,
No way.
Yeah.
I hope it's like an AMC employee.
This is like, that's some Hideo Kojima shit.
Yeah.
Just-
Francis Ford Coppola smoking too much weed in his trailer, being like, you know, it'd be a good idea.
didn't he sell his winery? He sold the
He
vineyards
did.
to-
He
to
sold like
fund this
everything. I
film?
think he sold everything. It's
Yeah,
just-
and Kevin
this
Costner
is
did it too to make like a cowboy movie. He's making like 4 of them.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. After like making a decade's worth of cowboy shows, now he's making cowboy movies.
No,
Like,
he's
I want to
just-
make my own. All right,
Good
do
on
it.
him, man.
You know what? More
Alright, fair
power to
enough.
you.
That's it. Anyway, the point is, Game Pass. I don't know. It's such a complex beast. No one can really predict how it's gonna go. Again, I would never have predicted that COD would be on Game Pass day one, but it is, and so, you know, it's things are happening. I don't know if it's gonna be net good or net bad for the industry, right? But my overall concern is that if you are conditioning audiences to not want to buy these extremely expensive games, or you expecting them to get it for like $10 brand new on day one, I'm like, that doesn't sound quite right. You know, and then I think you might end up just getting like Netflix and Atlas, J-Lo's Atlas is really where it's at. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But maybe we'll get, you know, the one good thing that Netflix has given us is a really good variety of really trashy TV shows. Like Love
That's
is
the goal,
Blind.
obviously.
So
And
what's
that viral
the
hit,
gaming
like every once in a while, something will pop up, and it's like, what is this crazy thing on Netflix?
Tiger King.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Tiger King.
He
But-
comforted
Yeah.
us in the deep depths of COVID-19.
God.
Yeah.
That was like the first thing
Definitely.
to drop. It
Yeah,
was like
God bless
March.
him for that. He seems like a good guy, right? I
I
didn't
think he
finish
seems
it.
pretty wholesome. That was my impression from him. So
No, isn't he
yeah.
like in jail for being like a criminal murderer man or something?
Killing.
He is.
I don't really remember.
Yes.
I
You don't remember it.
Tiger
The whole
King.
point of it is how much of a piece of shit this guy is. And that bitch Carol, what was her
Oh,
name?
Carol Baskin.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like, that bitch Carol Baskin. Like just
God.
constantly ragging on. Oh God, it was
God.
so funny to like.
I can't believe that was like 4
Oh,
years
man.
ago. Anyway, speaking
I know.
of Game Pass, obviously in the last episode we had Don Matthews from Ninja Theory on to talk about Hellblade 2. We'll talk about Hellblade when it comes to the what we've been playing, but I mean, there was a little bit of scuttlebutt about how long it is, and I feel like that's strange because they did outright say how long it was gonna be before the game came out.
Yeah.
But I feel like the chat wasn't really about how long the game is, because I think that's
Some
just
of
kind
it
of like
was.
there is, but like you just
you're
ignore
off
that.
Twitter, mate. You're not
No,
seeing
no. Listen,
shite.
I'm on Twitter, of course, but I mean that's the
He's
low hanging
silently-
fruit. No, I've always been doom scrolling Twitter because like
Yeah.
you have to keep up with it to see the news, right? So like you can ignore that stuff because you're like, okay, obviously, whatever. The argument that game too short is too simplistic an argument.
Yeah.
But the argument that like, okay, you've got this 5-hour game, but what have you done with it? Like, what have you actually provided in that 5 hours? That was the more interesting conversation. And I have not played Hellblade 2, so I cannot comment. However, I have watched a number of reviews from people that I trust and respect, and many of them basically kind of said that like they did not use that 5 hours particularly well. So I don't know, like, because I haven't played. So have both of you played it?
I played
JK
an
has.
hour.
Yes.
Okay, so you've done the press forward
I
part.
pushed forward a lot in that
Pushed
first
forward for an
hour.
hour. Okay. Okay.
I want to finish it because I really enjoyed the first Hellblade and I was really excited for this game. It looks incredible. Like, I'm genuinely
does,
kind of
yeah.
astounded at how good it looks at sometimes. But the moment-to-moment gameplay, what I am doing and how I am interacting with the game feels... It's not. ideal. It's not compelling to me. It's not giving me a satisfying loop of. I'm interested to see how combat goes because they said they completely rebuilt combat, and I was like, I don't know if you did.
Jake's face says it all.
I was just mashing one button and then occasionally blocking and parrying even rather than blocking. But yeah, I don't know. The thing is, like, Hellblade for me was always about the story, and I'm interested to see how it's gone from a very introspective. Oh no, Jake's.
No, I think there's still something that people can take away from the story.
And that's what I want, because I think ultimately, like, you can't judge game based on obviously what it's trying to do. You can kind of like I respect what it's trying to do, but ultimately it's in the execution. And I really respect the way that Ninja Theory have been trying to talk about mental health and have the experience of psychosis, and how they've tried to be very authentic when it's come to putting that into the game. And I respect them a hell of a lot for that. But if the rest of it's not great, I don't know.
For me, the whole 5 hour thing or whatever, for me, I finished in like 5.5 hours. It's a pacing thing. For me, it went down feeling like, and I ultimately, like, I was glad I played it, and I'd still recommend people who play the first one, play it. You know, there's not too much time investment, so give it a shot. You might like the story. But for me, it was a matter of pacing and how the game felt like all of the lower points from the original game, where the moments where you're really not doing much, you're just walking, you're listening to a little something, you're in a cave. That to me felt like a significant portion of this game. And it was like the way it was structured, it was like halfway through, I'm like, oh, this is the part where you're in a cave. You know, every game, every movie, there's a part where the character's in the cave. It goes on a little too long. But here, it went on too long, and then it was like a significant like third of the game. And I was like, oh. So it the way it all kind of panned out, it led to me loving 5 hour games. But with this one, feeling distinctly like unfulfilled from the story not quite hitting me, but also from a lack of my input, my agency in anything. Because I love a walking simulator type game. I've defended games where you barely do anything in them. But here, it was not enough. It was less than the first game. And that was not what I was looking for. I went in looking for, not for Hellblade 2 to become open world or like this big RPG or anything like that, but to give me a little more agency, find exciting new ways to kind of keep things going forward. And it didn't quite do that.
So was there anything other than the visuals that you felt as though this game advanced and was an improvement on the first game?
No.
Okay.
No, not for me personally. No.
Yeah, and I think a number of the reviewers that I follow and trust actually say exactly the same thing. They're like, there's no part of this that is any better. So I wonder like how that happens, because you've got a studio before this that, you know, made Hellblade, which for its time was, you know, quite, I wouldn't say cutting edge, but like, you know, it was very competent for what it was doing, and it had some very strong ideas that presented very strongly and got a great reception from people. And then that studio was acquired by Microsoft. And, you know, listening to the interview with Dom last week, and he's talking about how like all these extra resources they had and all this extra time doing motion capture stuff. And you get the feeling that this studio kind of scaled up significantly and had a lot more resources at their disposal. Where do you think they would have, how do you reconcile that? Like, how do you reconcile this studio being bigger, having more money and more time to work on this game, but then ending up with a product that feels like it's a step backwards versus the previous offering?
It had to have gone into some production stuff, because in the original game, you fought faceless creatures. And in this game, you square off against a couple of like real dudes. And especially like right at the start, like after you're going through the beach in that early part, you fight like a guy that looks like a real guy, and he emotes, he will shout at you, he will look at you, his animations will transition beautifully. If he's like pointing at you and taunting at you and then you swing at him, you'll see him pivot. A lot of that stuff is like pretty stunning, and that's kind of the only like thing I took away, where that was the only moment where I was like, wow, shit has been stepped up, you know? I didn't see it from an environment like layout design visually. Combat Yeah, combat's a whole other thing, man. If we're gonna go into it, it's more visceral, but it's lessened. So you're only fighting enemies one-on-one now.
That was in the first one too, right?
So the first one, there'd be a couple of guys, and usually you would get audio cues where it was like, "Look out, guy to your left, behind you." Now you're only ever squaring off one-on-one, which kind of is good because it helps that deliberate nature of a combat that the game has. It's about strike, parry, back and forth. But it led to it being kind of predictable in how the game would transition to you. Like you'd kill one guy, okay, a little thing will happen. Like an enemy will reach out from out of frame and push you. And then all of a sudden you're facing another way and you're fighting another person. And after a while that got so like predictable and rinse and repeat, it was kind of a disappointment. And it was weird. The only thing I really liked that they added to the combat is more projectiles. More enemies throw things at you. In the first game, only a boss, I believe, threw things at you. But now dudes will have little like throwing axes that they'll throw at you, and you can do like the Aragorn, like cling, like with the arrow, and it's very cool to pull off. But yeah, little moments like that, photo mode, and some moments in the story that I thought were pretty cool. I didn't get a big takeaway like I did with the first one. Ultimately, that's it. Long rambling way of saying
no,
not as good as the first. I also was never. I don't know. The first one for me, I was like, that was great. I don't need another one. The game left off on being like, we can tell more stories. But I was like, man, this is a really good open shut thing. So with this one, it's Senua who has already gone through hell and back and learned about herself and like jumped in this point in her life. So they try and do a little more of that, but then also they introduce other characters. A lot of other characters for a short game. And for me, they didn't really have quite enough time to really flesh out all of those characters and why they're important and why they're coming on the journey with you. It almost feels like you meet one person, you complete their thing, and then it's like, okay, come along for the ride. But like, what did they really bring? That's where I just felt to go back to when I say unfulfilled, I really just feel like the game needed more time. Like I could have used like, another 2 hours or so just to really flesh things out, because it ended and I didn't take away too much from it. I think other people might, I don't know, but for me, it didn't.
Do you think that ending was abrupt because of like production challenges? They're like, we need to ship this. We just got to cut it. Like, could you see that there was like loose threads that weren't tied up? Or were you just like, no, this is the ending they imagined and it just wasn't very good, like The Sopranos?
The ending comes a little quick, but it does try to say something. It does do a whole thing. But yeah, some of the characters, those like ensemble characters that come with you, I just wish, two of them, I was like, why were you here? What were you doing? Like, and it felt like they had a little more. So. Yeah.
I think, okay, this is an awkward point to make, so just bear with me, okay, right? So, like, we have no idea how video games are made, right? As people who just talk about them all day. We have so little clue. We have the vaguest of ideas, right? To me, and I think a video game like Hellblade is really emblematic of, or really highlights to me my own ignorance. Because I'm like, like I look at something like these massive games that are put together, expansive open world games or whatever else, and they have team sizes vary, obviously, for sure, but they take like 5 or 6 years to put together, and that's that. But then you've got something like Hellblade, which is like 100 people worked on this for 6 years, and it's a roughly 5-hour game that, from the sounds of it, doesn't really seem to advance mechanically over the first one. It's a very linear experience. You don't need to account for the player doing lots of different things. It's not physics driven or anything like that. It's a very very scripted, very linear, very narrative driven, mechanically simple game that runs for 5 hours. And so my broad point is, and that's not to say like, what have Ninja Theory been doing all this time? Because that's not the point. Like, I've definitely been around the block enough times to know my own ignorance in this part, but this is part of my own ignorance that I'm talking about here. It's kind of like, well, what have they been doing? But also, And then, but what have FromSoft been doing? And what have, like Spiders, the developers who made Greedfall, that was them, right? It was Spiders? Yeah, it was Spiders. What were they doing when they made their games? And like, what does it take to put together a game? And what is like the reasonable amount of output you'd expect in terms of like, I don't know. I don't even know how to talk about units in this. Is it hours played? Is it number of levels created per week or what? I don't know. Does my point make sense? It's kind of like, because I guess the reason I'm raising this is because a lot of people do say like, what the fuck have Ninja Theory been doing for 5 years if this is all they've made? And I'm like, well, there has to be an answer to that question. But the truth is, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't believe that Ninja Theory was sitting around on their ass doing nothing for 5 years. But I also can't answer that question because of my own ignorance of like not understanding how games are fully made. Does my point make sense at all? I hope I'm making some broad sense.
Does.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I have no idea what it could be other than that it's like different engine, new advancements in motion capture technology.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Photogrammetry.
I would be interested to have that conversation in good faith.
Yeah.
Like, so tell us, Dom, who you met last week, like, okay, so you worked on this game for 5 years. Like, how was that 5 years spent? Like, tell us what it actually means to make a game like this and why it takes 5 years to do that versus, I don't know, whatever else that we play that's, 3 times as long with like 4 times the amount of content in inverted commas, made by a similar team of people. But then, I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I do. And I also wonder, I mean, we didn't really talk about it with Dom, but like, I also wonder what the impact of Tamim leaving was because he wrote and directed the first game.
Yes.
And so was there a meaningful shift? And like, when he left Ninja Theory, and they had to kind of plug the gaps in there. Maybe that's why the story is not hitting as hard or whatever. And it's like, obviously not buying into the auteur stuff at all. Team games made by hundreds of people, 100 people in this case. But like, how does that impact production? How does that impact what your original plan was and the original goal of the game was versus what ultimately was released?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I definitely plan to play it at some point. I want
to reiterate too, like, because I spent a lot of time like rambling about like what I don't like, but ultimately I was still. It was interesting how well it just got right back into it. Like I was like, okay, I'm once again in Senua's shoes. I have the 3D audio. I have the same atmosphere. It feels cool to be back in this world. So. It provided that for me, those like 5 hours of like being back in the world of a game I really loved. And, again, some people might find the story or really Senua's arc, and it's hard to talk about it without spoiling things, but like they might find that a little bit more satisfying than I personally did. I don't know.
I'm fed up of Greek gods. I want Viking and Norse gods back, baby.
That's because there aren't many games based on Viking and Norse gods. I mean,
No,
there's not many of those.
of
There's a
them.
real shortage of them, of course. Are there any Viking games coming out anytime soon? I don't think so.
No.
Valheim 2. Is that a thing yet?
Ooh, Valheim 1 is not even out yet. Let's be real.
Yeah.
We're still waiting on Valheim 1 to finish up.
Just like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and God of War. There could be more.
And Hellblade 2017.
And Hellblade.
And that's it.
Exactly.
And there's like a billion indie games based on it as well.
Good Viking.
So,
all right, we got one more thing in the news grab bag that we're going to get to. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, you guys been rocking the Raycon lately or what?
Hell yeah, I got them right here.
These earbuds have been kicking. Can I say ass? Can I say kicking ass?
You're allowed to say ass.
Am I? I don't
ass. I say ass though, not ass.
Ass.
Say ass.
Yeah, come on.
Say ass.
Well, Raycon has been kicking ass because they're providing quality sound performance features at about half the price of other premium wireless audio brands. And now their everyday earbuds are updated with a new design. Case is a little sleeker. It's got a quick charge function, multi-point connectivity. So if like you want to like have somebody else get in on the action, it's got active noise cancellation, something that the previous model really needed. Definitely.
That's a big upgrade.
Yeah.
I mean, I found it still blocked out a fair amount of noise in general, but yeah, active noise cancelling is a really nice step up for sure.
I just like having a pair of these good to go because they have water resistance. They're like sweat resistant, stuff like that. They're pretty durable. I wore them this weekend while I was cleaning out my gutters. That is probably the most boring thing I've said on this podcast. But as I cleaned out my gutters, one of the Raycons popped out, landed in the gutter filled with water and leaves. Brush that sucker right off.
No way.
Popped it right in. No problem.
Wow.
Well, this is going to sound like bullshit, but it's true though. But the Raycons actually don't pop out of my ears, and that's actually why I wear them, because my ear shape is weird, and I have giant ears that everything else, like other earbuds, just fall out of. Like I literally can't wear the Apple ones, for example, because they just do not work in my ears.
These have all the little gel tips, so you can choose which one to get that.
Yeah,
fit
but
so it
even
doesn't
like
fall
I
out.
found that even with ones that do have selectable gel tips, it's like the shape of the actual earbud just doesn't fit. But these ones, the way they like tuck in, they're just really solid and they just never fall out for me. And that's actually one of the main reasons that I use my Raycons as much as I do. And I have a couple of pairs as well, because I have like one in my gym bag and I have one laying around my house. And because they're not that expensive, it's easy to get more than one set without feeling like you're, just being irresponsible.
Yeah.
Because I never like being without a set of earbuds. Like when I'm out and when I'm wherever, like I just want to have that with me, because I kind of need music in my ears to do anything. Like if I just have room sounds, like the sounds of people around me, I'm like, no, I can't think, I can't function, I have to block it out. And
Can't handle the sounds of life. Just have an
Me
extra
either.
backup pair of Raycons.
Right. Exactly.
So if you head over to buyraycon.com/friends today, you can get 15% off your Raycon order plus free shipping. That's right, you'll get 15% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/friends. That's buyraycon.com/friends. Thank you again to Raycon for sponsoring this episode.
And I don't know if I can say this legally, but the voice that tells you connected, power on. I have a crush on her. So she's my
All right,
friend.
Sam
now.
Altman.
Yeah, move step aside, ScarJo.
And I guess the other big thing that happened over the last couple of weeks is that Gamer Network has found its buyer in IGN. So ReedPop, the company behind shows like PAX, MCM Comic-Con in the UK, owned a network of video game media websites. So Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, VG247, under contract, VGC. They did own GamesIndustry.biz and channels like Outside Extra and Outside Xbox, Digital Foundry. They sold that portfolio to IGN, and so it's a weird one for me, because I know a lot of people at those sites. Like I'm from the UK, and Eurogamer was like the publication. Like back when we used to have the Games Media Awards, don't ask. They would win like every award every year. They would consistently produce like the most thought-provoking stuff. Like I really enjoyed their criticism. And then similarly with places like VG247 and Rock Paper Shotgun. If you own a PC and you're not reading Rock Paper Shotgun, what are you doing? And so it feels very weird, because it's it's the games media consolidation thing, and obviously there have been layoffs already. So like the editor-in-chief of GamesIndustry.biz, Brandon Sinclair, Alice from Rock Paper Shotgun, and numerous other people have all kind of lost their jobs in this process. It seems like everyone outside of the UK, they said.
Right.
But there's someone else was saying that.
And I wonder if that's because they don't need to provide any kind of notice, because the UK has specific laws about having to provide notice to staff. And I wonder if then 60 days from now, when that notice period might expire or whatever, they haven't served notice to those people yet, so I guess that's not happening. But it just seems odd that they would be able to axe those people immediately. Yeah, that sucks. So yeah.
And so I mean, there was a lot of angry quote. I mean, imagine because I think it was Chris Dring over at GamesIndustry.biz like wrote the article, and that had like over 1,000 or something quote tweets about people being really kind of angry at the news. And
so it's another story in a line of like the traditional game industry, the written word, struggling online. And that's like, if you're listening and you're like, well, what does this mean for me? That's what it means. It's less webs, like just the ongoing trend of less things to read, less people writing these things.
I think one of the things that is getting me about it is that like all of those websites in their own way would publish weird stuff, and like especially like Rock Paper Shotgun, and they would encouraged the weirdness, and like all of those people who work there and hopefully still will continue to work there had, you know, like someone like Chris Donlan, for example, is a legend, and for good reason. And if you've never read any features by Chris Donlan, you should definitely go. He's done some fantastic stuff over the years. I don't know, it's just kind of like horrible to think of the potential snuffing out of those voices, because can those publications exist the way that they do under the banner of IGN, which is something completely different? And like, that's no shade to IGN at all. I've got a lot of friends there. I use IGN like every day. They do some incredible work, but some of the features that they like, I can't see some of the things gelling with IGN. I also don't see, like, is it an SEO play? Are they going to get folded in a la 1UP to increase the footprint of IGN, like in that territory? It's weird, I guess, and kind of sad. And part of me is like, the games industry, like, oh, here's the silver lining. At least a lot of the people still have their jobs, like to hold on to some element of like good news about it. But in the reality of
for now,
and the reality of everything is that everything is shrinking, and it's sad, and things are changing, and I don't necessarily like change.
I definitely have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Go for it. I got mine out.
But I think all of this is very bad. And I think people like, oh, I don't read websites anyway. It's like, okay, cool. I think many people still do. And I think that the power of certain websites and certain writers is still very important. And that's not just limited to investigative reporting, by the way. Like, you have your Schreiers and you have your Rebecca Valentine, whatever, and like there's this handful of people who do investigative reporting, which is super rare because there's no money in it. As in, there's no money in for publishers to fund that work, right? Because that article is still only going to get X number of clicks. When if Jason Schreier wrote a guide for Elden Ring, he would be making Bloomberg a lot more money. You know what I mean? Like, that is just the economics of this business at this point. And that's a very bad place for this industry to be. But when these publications are focused on ad revenue, that is where they're going to go, right? And so you are going to have, with this sort of consolidation, fewer publications, hiring fewer writers, and training up fewer writers. And I think this is it. It's not, and when I say writers, I actually don't just mean like people who write. I mean just people who cover games. And because what I learned a long time ago is that, like, it takes time to get good at this job. You know, it actually does. Because I was so shit at it when I started. And you think you're good because you're like, hey, I'm getting some clicks, I'm getting some subscribers, I'm a natural talent. And you're like, no, you're not. You're fucking garbage. You know what I mean? And it's only when you actually practice at this and you actually start to understand what this is. And you're like, oh, okay. And it's only now, like 6 or 7 years in, that I feel like, okay, I'm actually pretty good at this point. You know, like, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do this pretty well. Not to pat myself on the back too much, but I think I do an okay job at what I do. And I feel like I've only really hit that equilibrium in the last little while because I've had this chance to essentially like train myself up. You know what I mean? Because there hasn't been a structure around me to teach me how to do this better and to get better faster. And these publications are that place to do that, right? Because independent content creation is a really lonely existence, and everyone needs to figure out these same lessons themselves over time. There's no one to teach or train you or mentor you or anything like that, right? So having these like publications that can bring people in and train them up about how to cover games well is important. And I know lots of people have criticisms about games media. That's totally fine, by the way. I'm not here to say that all games media is inherently good or, you know, beyond criticism. Of course not. Absolutely. Just the same way that YouTubers are not all good and beyond criticism. The same way that I'm not all good and beyond criticism. Whatever. You know what I'm saying, right? But the point is that having these places where you can hire people and train them is good. And at the same time, like, these people get paid peanuts. People who work in games media get paid no money at all. I don't think people actually understand how little like freelancers are getting. You know, like, I speak to some freelancers who are reviewing games for $75 the entire review. It's like they've worked for 25 hours to play this game and write up this review, and they get paid $75. Many of the reviews that you read online are unpaid. They're just people on the grind who want to, like, you know, try and get their name out there, and they work for free. And that is a fact. Like, go and speak to many, many freelance writers about the amount of free work that they've had to do to like get like one toe in the door. You know what I mean? And that whole model doesn't work it already, and it works even less when you only have like a handful of publications out there, making any kind of opportunity possible, right? And then I think there's just the whole risk of AI that's coming along, and like the AI is just going to sweep the legs out from what's left. That IGN is fine because they're big and they've got momentum, whatever else. But your smaller publications who are relying on X, Y, and Z, AI is just going to come and crunch them because you won't need to actually click on that link anymore. You just will get the answer that you want in search. Yeah. It's just, and that's the stated goal of every search platform right now. Google actually call it like Google Zero. That is this is not some byproduct thing that they might arrive at. This is like, that is what we are aiming at. And then what does that mean for the sites that create that content? They will die, except for the really big ones like IGN who will survive or whatever, right? So yeah, it sucks. It's disappointing, but it is just how it's going. And the only way that we can really like get better is if we, try and do it ourselves. That's the truth. Like we need to, like, as in we content creators, media people, like forming their own collectives. You see it with Second Wind, and you see it with NoClip, and you see it with, a handful of other independent platforms. And it's like, that's how it needs to be, because we can't rely on these corporations to do this well or to make it sustainable or anything like that. Like it has to be made possible by these small outfits.
Some sort of independence. And it's important for two ways, because if you think independence, you think, oh, it's easy. If like you're an established writer, you have a voice, you go out there, you put up a Patreon, bing, bong, boom. It doesn't always work like that. Not every writer has built an audience like that, but they are still valuable. They are still valid. And like, that's the stuff that I think still needs to get scooped up. And I think that's the thing that people realize, like, need to, like you said, Ralph, like get it, like fall into something independent, because I personally, like, I value so much long reads, like big, long, like the oral history of how this game was made, this game, X game, blah, 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 blah. Those come fewer and far between. They're also hard to find. And I would miss that. And I think that those types of things can live somewhere else independently, specifically because the corporations just don't, like, yes, I know not everybody's going to read like Metal Gear Solid made me discover my sexuality or something. Like not everybody's going to read that piece, but I think those are still interesting. It's just the corporations don't know how to monetize and make money from these things. So I don't want to see an internet where it's just, and guides writers do God's work, but I don't want to see a world where it's like just guides writers, because it's the last thing that is profitable for these companies that can't figure out anything else. There has to be something else.
I totally agree. And there's also lots of, and I think a lot of people say, oh, we just rely on, YouTube and TikTok and streamers, and that's all we need. And it's like, okay, first of all, those people are not equipped to do investigative reporting, generally speaking. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. And because the resources required to do that is so vast that your average YouTuber, whoever, does not have the resources to do that. But secondly, there's certain types of content that don't work, that only really work in the written form. There's like an interview with a developer, and I'm not talking about interviewing Hideo Kojima about Death Stranding 2, because that's immediately newsworthy. But like having a conversation with a developer, a smaller developer, about a smaller game that they're putting out, and you have that kind of conversation. It's not worth its own video per se, but like maybe there's a few grabs in there that are worth reporting on in a story, and it leads to some bigger conversations, And yeah, those sorts of like those deep dives into X, Y, and Z, Metal Gear sexuality, Meryl doing sit-ups in those cell kind of thing. You know what I mean? That could work as a video, sure, but like it could also just be a really great written piece that's, like 12 paragraphs long, and it's punchy, and you can't do 12 paragraphs on YouTube in a YouTube video, because the algorithm won't serve it, and it will in fact punish you for doing it, because YouTube is like, no, your video is not long enough, you have not put enough ads in this video, this is a bad video, we are going to downrank this in search, and we're going to punish your channel for it as well. But the written form is just like, yeah, here's 12 paragraphs, we're done. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's vital that this space continues to exist. And I really hope that it finds a way to to survive, you know, because it would really be like, I don't hate IGN, by the way. I got nothing against IGN. On balance, I appreciate most of what they do, you know, but it's just the idea that they would own everything sucks.
The whole consolidation. It's like, consolidation is happening everywhere.
Sucks.
Yeah, let's do it over here too. No way.
Yeah, and so that part sucks. It's not good for the industry overall. It's not good in video games development and publishing. It's not good in games media. So I'm against it. I'm against it.
What?
Yeah. I'm against it.
What is that?
Against it?
Yes, it's against it. It's
Okay.
like old-timey. You've never heard this? It's literally from The Simpsons as well. So
Jesus.
Where are the Simpsons? Hang on.
somewhere in there.
Somewhere.
Someone in the
like an
comment
Australian
section will
thing.
back me up on this, okay?
I'm against it.
I saw this one tweet that was like this week about Australian accent. It was like Australian murder shows are like, oh no, there's been a murder. Like, the way it was written was like, damn it,
so
that's
good.
exactly how we
I
sound.
can't
How
wait
did
to
you
talk
nail it
about
so
Chris
perfectly?
Hemsworth's Australian accent and the nuances.
Oh god.
My God. Yes, we will talk about that for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Well, before
So
we get
gloom and doom, I do want to just end on, if you do like reading stuff, do seek out those voices, seek out those writers, follow them on Twitter or whatever,
Yes.
or just bookmark their writer page. Because reading stuff is still good. In
fundamental.
20 years, we're not even going to have to read anymore. So read while you can.
Just the chip will read for us in
Yeah.
our brains. But no, also like support, directly support, like become a patron if you can afford it, obviously, to Second Wind and to No Clip and to whoever else that you think is putting out good stuff. If you can sling them a little bit of cash to keep them going, then do that, because that's actually the only way this continues to work. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely if you're in a position to be able to support that kind of like coverage, then definitely support it. It's a good thing.
Especially if you care about how games are made or anything like that, because you can you'll only have in the future, if there's no anything, you only are going to have the publishers telling the story of how a game was made, and that's the sanitized corporate version where we learn nothing.
So the publishers literally own the media outlets, like the Saudi savvy investment fund literally like bought or like are setting up a gaming vertical inside of Rolling Stone this week. It's like, that's a game publisher and they're now owning a section of the media. Like that seems incorrect. It's absolutely incorrect. It's like when Bobby Kotick thought about buying Kotaku. You know what I mean? That's a thing that actually happened. And I guarantee you'll see more of it. Why not? Like, why wouldn't these publications, like these massive entities with too much cash to burn in the game space, why wouldn't they start buying up media outlets so they can start seeding the message? You know what I mean? Why wouldn't they do that?
Well, wasn't Fanbyte owned by Tencent and then that imploded?
Was that actually owned by them?
Yeah.
It was. You're right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yaps. Exactly. You know. So
we should buy them. I got
$900.
Yeah, I got
Just buy all the
$200.
websites. Let's do it.
I got some old comic books I can sell.
There you go.
Support the ones I like: Video Games Industry Memo, Game Discover Co. I know that VGC Andy was like, if we did a Patreon, what would you want from it? VGC is my go-to every day.
Yeah, VGC's good.
I'll definitely sub to their like. I do GameFile.
GameFile too.
GameFile's great.
I do Second Wind.
Yep.
I do No Clip. And obviously, I'm fortunate enough to be. People make games. I don't, but like always really like their output.
Yeah.
And like obviously, I'm fortunate enough to be in that position where I can do that. But that always feels like money very well spent to me, because I really appreciate those people and what they do. And if Andy from VGC was to set up his own thing, for sure, because they do some of the best reporting in the business, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well.
Yeah.
Should we go have a use the question? There's a little palette
Yeah,
cleanser.
let's do it.
This one's from
What do you got?
Graham. Hey FPS, the quote, given the opportunity, gamers will optimize the fun out of a game, is one that I think about often. I was thinking about it as I was finishing up a long overdue playthrough of Control. I noticed by the end I was playing a particular way and was not deviating from it, but I didn't care because the strategies worked for me and I was having a great time. However, I do wonder if I would have enjoyed combat more if the game forced me to try other playstyles out. Which do you prefer? Finding a playstyle that works for you and sticking with it, consistently experimenting with what the game has to offer, or having the game force you to experiment with its systems? Have a great morning, day / night.
Depends
That's
on
a really
the
good
game.
question.
The obvious answer is, oh no, I want to be consistently challenged so I can learn the nuances and see the ins and outs of this entire game. But some games just have a really good fucking sword. And you're like, this is my sword for the rest of the game.
This is my
because
end game sword.
It has electricity, you know?
Me replaying Elden Ring right now. Within 2 hours, I got the meteorite thing, which is like the scaling with int and the Bloodhound Fang, and I'm just like, well, these are at least mid to late game weapons for me now.
Like, why not?
Sure.
Why shouldn't I?
Why shouldn't I? I don't treat myself. I went into this playthrough. I'm pretty sure I said it on here. I went into this playthrough being like, oh, I'm gonna do a guts build, like a strength build. I'm gonna have the big sword.
Now you're just choosing the cheesiest bullshit ever.
Well, like, because
this game is so easy now.
because I went and killed that sad defenseless dragon over in Galen, and I got my 80,000 souls.
Of course. So you just rob through everything then.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I'm good at it. Maybe this is why Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom didn't click for me, because I am not an experimenty gamer. I like it when things just work for me. And so maybe I think I just find a thing and because then I get the satisfaction of being good at it because of practice, because I'm not experimenting. So I'm sticking with the same thing.
Yeah, I think it really, again, it depends. Like, for example, looters really naturally lead to that style of play because the game itself is not very objective focused. It's really just about the play, right? And so therefore it's like, well, today I'm going to run this build, which does this bullshit. And then tomorrow I'm going to run a different one because why not? Like, I'm just here to grind, so I may as well spice it up a little bit, right?
See, that pisses me off. That's like,
why?
That's busy work for me. Going in and swapping stuff out, that feels...
Well, then I agree with you. However, certain games get to the point where they've got loadout systems that are very intuitive and that allow you to do that. Certainly Destiny has that. The Division had it. Diablo 3 never. I don't think Diablo 3 ever got a loadout system. Diablo 4 definitely doesn't. I can't remember correct me if I'm in the comments, let me know if it actually did. Yeah, so I agree with you. I don't want to do the annoying shit. I hate that, right? But when you remove that barrier to me, I think it opens up a lot of the game. And Destiny 2 is definitely a much better game now because of its loadout system, because it has 8 slots and you can switch between them immediately. It's very comprehensive. It really is great, I would say at the same time, if I'm in an objectives focused game, I kind of need the game to push me toward that different style of play. As an example, like The Last of Us. The Last of Us has this really cool combat that does heaps of cool shit, right? You see all those videos from like Sunny Legend or whatever. He's just tearing shit up and you're like, whoa, you could do that? I didn't even know that move was in the game. Like, whatever. Because me, I'm just like sneak, throw a thing, run up. That's it. That's all. That's the only way I play, right? Because the game never asks me to do anything different. And so I have all these tools at my disposal that I feel like are wasted because I'm just focused on the objective, and there's nothing that really forces me to deviate from that, So that part it doesn't work for me. But then like a roguelite, for example, with Hades, and Hades has all these different weapons, and sure, some of them I think are better than others, but it has this thing where every new run, one of the weapons is kind of supercharged and you get bonus currency for playing with that weapon. And I'm like, yes, that is exactly it. I don't like using that weapon, but I'm going to use it because you've incentivized me to do so. And then I use it and I'm like, actually, you know what? This weapon's pretty good. I like this. And at that point, more of the game has opened up for me, and because I've been forced to experiment. So yeah, I definitely do not tend towards this stuff naturally outside of looters. But yeah, when it exists, I'm really glad for it. And I get pissed off when games don't have this sort of stuff because I'm like, you didn't ask me to change it up. It's your fault. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's the onus is on the game to make me change my behavior, which I know is not the right attitude, I think. But that's how I personally view it for sure.
No, it's the same thing with when you play games where it's like the game's designed like sandboxy to find your own fun or make your own fun.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
I need a push.
Absolutely. Yeah, and games that can figure out how to nudge the player without like the gentle nudge is good. The shove is annoying where it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. That weapon sucks. Or you're not making this fun. You're punishing me rather than incentivizing me. Or I feel like I'm sacrificing too much if I don't go with what you want. But if you just give me like a gentle nudge, I'm like, all right, that's enough. I'll play along. Let's go. So good question.
Yeah, great question. I can't remember which game it was I was playing recently, but like there was an AI character with me that kept just yelling at me to change my playstyle, and I was like, no, stop, nope.
Shut
up. What have we been playing, Ralph?
What haven't we been
playing?
We've had a good little period, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first briefly with Destiny while we're sort of on that track. Okay, so I went to Bungle HQ and
they let you in?
They let me in. They were very nice, actually, and I caught up with some Bungie developers I hadn't seen in a while, which is really great to see them. I was there for 2 full days playing the Final Shape, and we saw a lot of it. Like, usually you go to these sort of events, and it's pretty quick, like a morning play block, and then an afternoon play block, and they're really like, just give you a little taste of stuff, and lots of PowerPoint presentation before. No, they were like, yo, just sit down. Not quite, but basically just sit down and play for 2 days. That was kind of it. Like, it was pretty impressive. Nice. They showed us, I would say, at least 60% of the campaign, like of the campaign missions that are about to drop. They showed us the whole new patrol destination that's like that we're going to spend a lot of time on. They showed us the new strike that we can play through. They showed us, we got to play around with some PvP. Basically all of the, not all, but a huge chunk of the new exotic items that are arriving and new weapons. The new subclass, like we really saw this expansion. So it was a really good session from that
What is the new patrol section like?
It's really different to anything else because it's actually a solo destination. So the patrol zones are usually dynamically match made. Yeah. So you'll see just random people come in, whatever. But this one, by default, you load in on your own. And it's this gigantic area full of activities that are kind of tuned specifically for one person or maybe 2 or 3, because you can invite like a fire team in with you if you like. And that has allowed Bungie to make a whole set of new activities that they haven't done before, to tune them very precisely. It was a really interesting space that felt great to play in. And I think that was a real high point of what I experienced. Prismatic is the major thing. It's the new subclass available in the thing. This is all getting in the weeds for non-Destiny players, but imagine there's builds, there's like classes in different games. Prismatic is essentially a class type that combines elements from all of the others.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's very interesting and very flexible with how it can be used. It's really fun. They've done a really great job with it, and I'm very optimistic for what that means for the future of the next little chapter of the game, right? The next 12 months. I don't know. And yeah, outside of that, I wasn't super taken with like the mission design or story stuff, to be honest. That wasn't really hitting with me. And I saw similar commentary from Destin from IGN. Destin reviewing or previewing Destiny. He said something similar, and I think I'm kind of on the same page for me, but it's too early to judge the story until you see the whole thing. Like can't really do that. Yeah, look, it's more Destiny, which goes without saying, but I know you guys always have a passing interest, and you're always like, should I start playing Destiny? I'm like, When it was the Witch Queen, I was like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is pretty, like, they're definitely cooked with this expansion. And it's too early to say whether this will be the same because I've only previewed it. But right now, I don't know. I didn't see those things jumping out at me that would be like, oh, a new player should start playing Destiny right now. I suspect this will probably make existing players really happy, but I don't know about new players. I guess not. And also, this is the other thing, and I said this in my preview, but like, we don't know what's next for Destiny. We know that there are some like acts coming, which are kind of these smaller content drops in the future, but we don't know if there's another expansion next year. We don't know if they're gonna, hold off and not do another expansion for 2 years because they need to put all their resources behind the launch of Marathon, which we assume will be their next major release. We don't know if they're secretly working on Destiny 3, which is, what people are assuming, but we don't know. So it's hard to ask people to start playing this game right now. because you don't know what's next. It's like, you know what's next for World of Warcraft. They just told you that there's like a 3-episode saga coming for that game.
Yeah.
And you could decide to like, all right, cool. I'm going to invest in that. That's a thing I'm going to invest my time and energy into, because I know that there's this future and it's going to build and whatever else. With this though, you're like, I don't know, is Destiny 2 going away after this, and all the things that I've grinded for are just going to go away? And when they launch a Destiny 3 in 3 or 4 years time, we don't know. So it does make it a tricky proposition when you consider whether or not it's time to like start playing Destiny for the first time. So
What about people?
Yeah.
What about like lapsed players?
yeah, I mean, look, I think lapsed players, it's a good, from what I've seen, it seems like a good offering, because lapsed players will already have some familiarity with elements of the subclasses that feed into Prismatic, and also they would have played some stories. Like, they'll know the story elements as well, and they're like, hey, Cade's back, I love that guy, you know, whatever. And also it's kind of a closure of a 10-year saga, and maybe you only experienced a few beats along the way, but you at least have some connection to the characters and the world and the story, and you're like, cool. So for lapsed players, I do think that. But then does that become a thing where these lapsed players become fully re-engaged in Destiny long term? Again, it's hard to imagine that or ask them to do that when Bungie can't give them any concrete answers as to what their intentions are for this franchise. So yeah, I can't believe it's out next week, by the way.
Jesus.
When this goes out, this is probably going to go out on like Saturday, maybe Friday or Saturday. At that point, the expansion launches like 4 days after that. It's so crazy. We're in June. Can you believe we're in June? No. That's June, by the way. So
I understand what you meant.
It's crazy, man. The year has flown so fast.
Tell me about it.
Anyway, that's Destiny.
That's Destiny.
It's actually, as soon as I uploaded the video, it's so funny whenever I upload Destiny's videos. I just get like a lot of dislikes for no reason. For no reason
Sounds
other than
right.
people are like, we don't want to hear you talk about this fucking game. Shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right. So I just have learned to weather those dislikes at this point. It's just how it goes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh.
All right, that's me.
That's you. Jake, you've been playing Rogue Prince of Persia.
Yeah, he's gone rogue.
Me
Believe it or
too.
not, he's gone rogue. It's legit. It is very early access though, but it is from the people who made Dead Cells. Who Dead Cells rolled out, I believe, with early access for a long time, and it was.
But these guys weren't the ones that shipped Dead Cells 1.0.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a different studio. So that first studio
Motion
that
Twin?
shipped 1.0 was Motion Twin, and then a year after Dead Cells launched, they handed over to Evil Empire, this studio.
Okay.
So this studio has done the post-launch support,
Right, which
for
I
Dead
like
Cells.
all that. So
did
that's
they
good.
do
But
the
thank you. I didn't know
Castlevania?
that. Thank you for clarifying. I'm bad at this.
You're not
It's good. It's not I wouldn't say it's a full game. It's 2 bosses, and then you get hit with like a splash screen like, thanks for playing, give us feedback, there's still more to come. But for the baseline here, I think it's fun. It's got that slick responsive movement, quick dashes down, dodges, so it plays kind of like a Dead Cells, but you're wall running. And that adds a whole different dimension, believe it or not. You wouldn't think it would be, because you think wall running and it's like, oh, that's just how I get over cliffs or jumps. But it adds a whole extra dimension, because now you're looking in the background of the level design, being like, is that a wall? Is that a wall in that? Can I? And the wall running is directional, so you can go up, down, left, right. So it's like a scramble. And it really opens up a lot of extra. So my favorite thing about these types of games is how quickly you can move through an environment, how you can master that dash, down, up, boom. So the wall running kind of adds a good little extra element to that. Plus the Prince of Persia, like flippy doos on poles and, climbing down ropes and stuff like that. So it's got the Prince of Persia flavor with Dead Cells spice, combat, doling out of abilities. I just want to see more enemy types, more abilities. The randomization to the levels, I wanted more from that as well.
Yeah, I agree with you.
but I think it's a really good start. The music is banging. The art style
How good is the
cool.
music?
The music's like really good.
So good. I've been listening to the OST like all week. It's so fantastic.
Like it's got bass that like hits. It's got like good beats to it. I was like, damn, Prince of Persia's purple or like pink.
Oh,
yeah,
not the blue
color.
The environments are beautiful. I'm really into this, and I finished the second boss. I hit that wall, and I went, oh wow. I almost wish I didn't jump in yet, just because I want more right now. So I'm glad I got a taste, but I really wish I could have kept going because I like it that much. It gave me the same dopamine rush, the addiction that these types of games do, but with that Prince of Persia vibe. So I was, as a Prince of Persia person, I'm happy so far.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it is genuinely early access, and I think that's kind of weird to say, but we've had 2 games recently that launched into early access, but they feel so polished and content rich, namely Hades 2 and No Rest for the Wicked. And so I think consumers might be thinking, this is what all early access games it's like. It's like, no, that is not the case. Early access usually means early access. Like, this is nowhere near done. We've got a big journey ahead of us. That's how this feels. And I'm okay with that. Like, I really am really okay with it. This is actually the very first early access game that Ubisoft has ever released.
Wow.
Huh.
And it's actually early access as opposed to it being broken and unfinished. Early access in all but name.
Hey.
It's also on Steam with no Uplay anything.
Love it. I mean, because I did a video on earlier this week, and I had this like all these bullet points about like why this is good. Like, on Steam, early access, it's a third party deal. So it's like Ubisoft have lent out their IP to a small studio to do something with. And I wish more publishers would do that. Like, you don't always need to own the studios that are working on your IP. Like, Sony could just partner with some little indie team to make a 2D God of War fucking roguelike. Why couldn't we get that? That'd be sick. Do that. You know what I mean? You don't need to own the studio that's making that game. It's okay to work with other studios. So I really like a lot of how Ubisoft are putting this out to market, to be honest. It's cool. It's nice. And it does help that it's a good game. I really have enjoyed it. And
it kind of runs on Steam Deck for the most part. I had some issues, but it was playable.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's really good for that. Did you like the bosses?
I think this combat is the weakest aspect. The thing is, combat in that game is dependent not upon throughput and damage. It's dependent upon positioning and movement and like using other enemies or choosing to not engage in combat. Whereas the bosses is kind of just like sitting there hitting the boss a lot. Yeah. And that is what the game is the worst at. And so the bosses I don't think are satisfying from that angle, right? So hopefully they can flesh out those encounters a little more or have some different styles of boss encounters that lean more into the game's strength. But for me, I didn't really care that much. I was like, I enjoyed everything else so much. It was just a minor gripe almost, But I found it very interesting how different it was from Dead Cells, because it kind of looks like it, and it's got some structural elements that are very similar, but the core feel of it in combat and traversal is very much its own thing. And it takes time to realize that because it's subtle, the way that combat works. Yeah, it's not about big damage or big power-ups. Like, it really is about like mastering your positioning and mastering knockbacks and environmental damage and all that sort of stuff. So until you're awake to that stuff, you're sort of like, what is this? But then when you get it, you're like, this is nice.
Yeah, when it clicks too, and you realize like, it's not taking the easy way out to kick enemies into pits. You're supposed to do that. And then with all the abilities, like all the little modifiers you get are all mostly tied to doing a backflip over an enemy or kicking an enemy into a wall. It encourages that stuff.
Yeah, so I think those subtleties take time to see and feel because, again, you just think, it's the studio that made Dead Cells. Oh, I unlock weapons by collecting oozes. This is Dead Cells all over again. And that's partly true, but there's more than enough here that makes it stand on its own 2 feet. So yeah, I'm like you. I wouldn't recommend you pick this up right now. I think there's like a good 10 to 20 hours of gameplay here, depending on how you want to play it and how much you want to unlock. If you want to do everything that's available, unlock every single thing and really just play the shit out of it, you could stretch it to 20 hours. I think it's probably going to be closer to 15. I put about 10 to 12 in it, and I unlocked about 2/3 of what's available. I felt very happy with that time and really excited to return to it when it's a 1.0 access release, which I don't think is going to be anytime soon. Like if I was to guess where this is at, I might even go as far as to say it's like mid to late next year before it hits 1.0 at the earliest. Like maybe end of next year seems safest. Whereas with Hades, I'm like, hey, you could probably just add, a little bit onto this and ship it tomorrow, even though they said it's going to be 2025. So yeah.
Damn. It's gonna. I think I'll wait a little bit more. I think I'm. I don't know. There's just so much going on right now. Maybe over the summer.
With your Elden Ring playthrough.
Yeah, my Elden Ring playthrough.
Jeez.
I'm about 15 hours in. So I usually have an Elden Ring character. Every time I make a character in a video game, I call them Jeff. But then
like from 21 Jump Street.
Like my name Jeff.
My name's Jeff.
Yep, kind of. I think that is where I started doing it from. But then I had a realization the other day when I was booting up Elden Ring that I personally know 5 people named Jeff.
Okay.
With J's and 1 G, and I was like, "Are you counting? I work with 2: Baclar, Grubb, Gerstmann, Jeff, Keeley." And
Jeff Rubes.
Yeah, Jeff Rubes. So 5 Jeffs. And I was
all
like,
nice.
All lovely Jeffs. And I was like, but that means that I can't have characters named Jeff anymore. So now I have a character named Craig.
Craig.
Which like the American way of saying Craig, sorry. So
Craig.
Creg, the American way of saying Craig.
Right.
Because I only know one.
Why do they say it that way?
I know one Craig IRL. Shout out to Craig. But I don't know any Craigs.
Craig.
I know a Greg.
What's up with? They make fun of us for the way we pronounce June.
Yeah.
You guys fucking butcher Craig.
Yeah.
How do you say Craig?
Craig.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
It does make sense.
Yeah. It really
you
does.
Got the A and the I in there.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm like 15 hours into my Elden Ring playthrough, but I've been playing a lot of smaller games. So I finished Little Kitty Big City. I
was going to say that you said that perfectly. I'm going to make fun of the way you say stuff now.
Does the cat die at the end?
Little Kitty Big City.
Ralph, goddammit, you and I are supposed to team up against Jake. Like, come on.
I have my limits, okay? I have my limits, right?
I played Little Kitty Big City in one sitting. It's cat game. It's cute. It's I saw a lot of people compare it to Goose Game because you are just a little cat knocking things over, and it's
Cat's being a jerk.
Basically, you are in some kind of building in what looks to be like a Japanese city, and you fall, and then you have to find fish that'll give you the strength to be able to climb. And then it's kind of this small little city.
It's like the Dark Knight Rises.
Molded by it. Anyway, I can't do a Bane voice. And so you basically, there's a bunch of different areas to go to, wacky little characters to meet. There is I think it's a raccoon who is kind of invented like quantum tunneling between the
this is just rockets.
Well, no, basically she created fast travel around, but she like messes around with physics. It's a really cute, sweet game. I finished it in like 2-3 hours, and it's like there's not really that much to kind of talk about it. Where it's like it has a sense of humor. You are going around collecting these fish. There are good puzzles. For example, one time you run into a duck who has lost all of his ducklings and you have to go find them. So typical fetch quest, but all of the ducklings are in different predicaments and you have to interact with the environments. Like one of them's in a grocery store, but when you get spotted in there, the grocer will come pick you up and throw you outside because you're a cat. You're not supposed to be in there. So there's kind of some elements of like trying to get around that. Finding different routes in. I'm not saying that in like it's an immersive sim kind of way, but there are like different ways to solve the puzzles. And it's just cute. It was just a very nice experience. Did it in one sitting. Bam. I did start to play. I haven't got very far yet, but I have started to play Paper Trail, which is the game.
Oh yeah, nice.
Where you are folding sort of origami and it changes the way the map.
Looks great.
It's really cute. I wonder how long I'm going to be into the conceit of the folding the paper though.
Sure.
because it's not like, you know, you don't come out with a little origami crane at the end of it. There's only a certain number of ways you can fold a piece of paper. But so far, it's a very cute, and like I like how tactile it is, but I wish I could probably remap this. I need to look at it, but the default settings are that the right thumbstick is the one that you select the page corner with, and that does not feel natural to me. I wish it was the left, but I'm sure I can remap that. The other game that I played, I'm running through them because I got so I played.
This is great. This is very different to. I just played lots of Destiny. It's the same as the last 10 years.
if you're looking for again another fun 2-hour, I can beat this game, in one sitting game, and I tweeted out that this was the perfect game to play over the holiday weekend. Played Duck Detective: The Secret Salami.
This does look very cool.
I loved it.
Yeah.
So you play as the duck detective. You get called in. You're a private detective, but it's really funny because they kind of play into those noir tropes where you're in your mucky bedroom and you can't afford rent money because you spent it all on bread, and you've got an ex-wife called Anna. You're like, Anna, no, I'm sorry. I said I'd be better. And you get called to a bus depot, like a bus terminal, or like a bus, the office, I guess, that runs the bus company, because someone has been stealing lunches, and you have to go around. You have to interview
like
people.
Kindergarten cop.
Yeah, it's basically, you go around interviewing people. You kind of examine them, and you kind of pick up. So, for example, the receptionist that you meet, you know, she's got like a K-pop thing, and you're like, you deduce that she's a K-pop fan, and the thing is like some of the stuff you pick up on people, you do have to remember for the whole game. And then each character, again, a wacky assortment of characters. What's my cat doing? She's freaking out with a box somewhere. But it felt like a puzzle where there was one puzzle that was a real head scratcher, and it took me ages to get it. But the rest of them were like softly challenging, but not to the point where I ever felt discouraged or I wanted to stop playing the game. I had a blast, start to finish.
Is the dialogue like noir?
Not all of it. It's mostly that duck detective.
Okay.
But it's very, very funny. In between the loading screens, they have like fake duck facts. So it's like, did you know 90% of ducks never pay their taxes or something? Like, it's just really stupid humor that I
like
really
this. He's
enjoyed.
like dripped out. He looks cool as hell.
Oh, he has a really good name as well. I forget what it was, but it was a proper like noir duck name.
Sure.
So that's a puzzle game with soft challenges that you're not going to bang your head up against the wall. The other game I'm playing that I'm actually currently obsessed with. Sorry.
Here we go.
Sorry, audio.
Real puzzle game here. She's holding up notes. Pages of notes.
Like
lots of
David
notes.
Fincher's
Like, I've
7 level of notes.
Pictures.
I got sent a custom book for this, actually.
Oh, you did? Oh,
I got sent the custom notebook for this.
Oh
with,
my.
like stuff in it. Yeah. So what's the game, by the way, Lucy?
So this is Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Is it Simogo, the team behind Sayonara Wild Hearts?
Yeah.
Which is a game that I did not actually play.
Oh, okay. I like that one.
But this one was in, I think, a Nintendo Direct or something fairly recently. And I didn't know anything about it, but Kurt at work, at Gamespot, Kurt and Davina, gave it a 9 out of 10. And I talked to him about it, and he was like obsessed with it. And he showed me his notebook. It is a puzzle game where Jelly, I swear to God, stop scratching my PC. It's my cat. Stop it. That's my headphones. Anyway, so you play a character, you just kind of turn up at this hotel. The Hotel Letztes Jahr, which is the hotel last year in German. Those 6 years of German coming in strong.
They always make a little appearance, don't they? Those years.
Those years.
Every now and then they pop in. Wait till we're in Germany for Gamescom.
I'm
they're really
booked
gonna
for
put in the
hey,
work. Yeah.
You're gonna be asking me to order you all beers, and I'll do it. 'Cause I love you.
I'll just be like, I'll have a schnitzel, thanks, and I'm covered for the week.
So you rock up at this hotel, and you just have a note, and it just says, "Find the man at the hotel," and that's kind of all you're given. But your character has a photographic memory, so every time you see something in the environment, like a poster or a note, you remember it. She's gonna turn my PC off, so
That'd be pretty funny.
I
if that
know. I'm
happened.
like terrified because she keeps like going up to the PC and using the claws. Oh well, now she's here. And then the button is right there, so I feel like she's gonna turn it off. Anyway, she's up on the desk now. Turn up to this hotel. Don't know who anyone is. You just have to find the man, and you have a photographic memory. Everything you see, you kind of remember, and then you just get solved. You just get. I'm explaining this terribly. You get a bunch of puzzles, and so everything in the hotel is kind of locked off to you. But as you start to discover puzzles and figure out how they work, you gradually unlock access to more of the hotel. There is a man. I also like don't want to spoil stuff because some of the story stuff is really cool and just really lends itself to the whole experience because it's eerie, but it's not scary. You're going around and there's just like a weird find the truth kind of thing going on, and so I'm jumping into that hole and like kind of going down the rabbit hole with it. The puzzles though, so basically when you boot up the game and you kind of go into the mind palace-y bit with all the notes and stuff and you read the manual, it's like this game expects you to know things like the 24-hour clock. It says stuff like basic algebra, Greek, Roman numerals and stuff. And so there is a library that you can find at the very beginning of the game, and it actually has book refreshes on all of those. So I genuinely like took pictures with my phone. That exactly.
This literally has like what do you call it?
Can you send me that?
Greek new. Yeah, can I send you this? I'll bring it with me to LA.
Thank you.
It's got like the star signs. It's got like Greek lettering. It's got all that sort of shit. So yeah.
So there is this mysterious man and a bunch of puzzles to solve, and some of them are deceptively like I was again banging my head against the wall for ages, and then I was like, oh, I'm so stupid. And it has this perfect balance of making me feel like an idiot and then making me feel like an absolute genius. The vibes are incredible. It's not overwhelming. I mean, like, you kind of wander around and you kind of just take note of like, oh, okay, there's a clock in here and that clock is kind of weird. Or, you know, one of the first things that I was doing that were really satisfying to do, just from even like a game feel perspective, but also because it was an easy puzzle to give me confidence, is there's some kind of magician called Lorenzo. And he has all these posters that have been shredded and just left around the hotel, and that you can move the pieces back together and kind of get them back into their normal state. And so, you know, I started doing a bunch of those. Then I found something that unlocked like 5 different puzzles for me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so into this. I spent like 3 hours just in one go at the weekend. Glass of wine, my notebook. I feel like, you know, the bit in It's Always Sunny where he's like, there is no Carol in HR. I feel like that's where I'm going to get with this game. It's just like, I love a puzzle game and it's really good.
Sure. Please. It sounds fantastic. It sounds like it has, because I've spoken to a bunch of people about it as well. It sounds like it has strong game of the year, like sleeper hit game of the year energy, where it's just it's on every list as like the number 4 entry before you get to like I don't know, whatever. It just really sounds awesome.
And I don't want to delve too much into the characters or like the stuff that I've seen and I'm starting to unlock, because I think the discovery of that is so fun. Like I was sitting there, I was texting Kurt the whole time, and I was like, "Oh shit, I found this thing!" And he was like, "Oh, you're just getting started." So I'm like, I want to preserve that for other people. If you like puzzle games, I really strongly recommend it. It's great. Like if you're the type of person like me, if you enjoy doing your connections, your Puzzmos, like scratch the brain a little bit, it's great.
Can you play it on Steam Deck, or would it be annoying to do so?
I think it would be. I haven't done it on Steam Deck. I've been playing it on PC, but you can play it with one hand.
Okay.
Because there is only movement, and then any face button, I believe, opens up your kind of like your menu. Because also they have other things where it's like you have to go to the toilet. If there's coffee machines, and if you are sufficiently caffeinated, you can run rather than just walk. And so there are little systems in there, but they are not that too intense to deal with. Like I completely forget that my character needs to pee. I might actually see.
It's weird.
Yeah, because I don't know. But then I found a
I've heard
toilet.
of survival games making you need to drink. I haven't heard of video games making you need to pee. That's
Yeah, and there's a
that's-
temperature gauge as well, and I haven't figured out that part yet either.
Huh.
But then everything that you
So when you
find,
get up to a high mountain, you got to wear thick clothing, and then when you get into, that's it. That's how it works.
wait. But it's you're just in the hotel, and that's
Sure.
the thing. I love, The Shining is one of my favorite books and movies of all time. If you stick me in a creepy hotel, I'm all
You're
about
there.
it. I'm there.
That's it.
Hey.
You should have gone to the Star Wars hotel while that was still open.
Oh, I didn't have a spare $6,000
Should have just
for two.
make it a press junket.
I think they did do a press junket. I think someone
Okay.
from our entertainment team actually went.
Sick.
Back in the day, but I'm not a Star Wars.
Shout out to you're not into Star Wars?
Oh boy.
It's okay.
Not really.
It's okay to be not into Star Wars. We all used to be into Star
That's
Wars,
the
but now we're like,
thing.
it's very complicated.
That's the thing. I just kind of appreciated the movies that I saw as a kid. I enjoyed The Force Awakens. I like Jedi Survivor a lot. I can't get on board with Mandalorian. I watched the first season of
all that
Mandalorian.
stuff.
Mandalorian, Boba Fett. What the hell's the new one called?
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan, Acolyte.
Andor is meant to be. I haven't watched Andor, but that's meant to be the good one.
That is the good one.
Yeah.
But that's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I feel like Star Wars fans have lied to me about what's good ones before.
We will continue to
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And so I
yeah.
feel the same about Marvel at this point where it's like, just tell me what is actually, like the core stuff that I have to get on board with. If it's a cool story that doesn't have over reliance on fucking Darth Vader and whatever, then I'm more into it.
But Darth
Have
Vader's
you-
cool.
Yeah, he is cool actually, but he's a bit overused now, I suppose.
Yeah.
I actually watched Loki season 2
Oh,
recently.
dude.
Finally,
Yeah.
How's that?
that's proper television. Actually,
Nobody fucking I told everybody to watch it. Nobody
okay.
cares. It's so good.
Except Jonathan Majors is so bad in it. He is so absurdly bad because he plays like a version of himself from like the 1860s or whatever. He's like a charlatan inventor type.
It's a little forced.
But he has the say again.
It's forced. Like, ooh, I'm a bumbly guy.
Totally, but like in such a bad way that it's just awful. It's so bad. He's so because in Loki season 1, he's so badass and just like he has this presence and he just crushes it, but he doesn't have character actor chops or whatever. And it's a train wreck in every scene. But even despite that, it was still a really great show. And like I've been putting it on. I've had it like downloaded on my iPad forever because I'm like, I need to watch this one next time I travel. Blah blah blah. Then I finally just smashed out when I went to Seattle. I just smashed out all 6 episodes in a row, and I'm like, damn. All right, yeah, that was good. It was clever and well written, and the production values were there, and the performances were all great, and it stuck the landing, and it was cool. And I was like, all right, this is a great production, and it's done now. That there's no season 3 planned, and that's great as well. It's nice to know that things end, you know. So yeah, it was a really nice capstone to that MCU because I think that was Loki season 1 post Endgame. It was, wasn't it? It definitely was.
Yeah.
It was like that was that, and that was one of the first ones actually. It was that and WandaVision, and WandaVision I really liked except for the back end, and Loki season 1 I loved. And then, season 2 is even better. So I was really glad I watched it.
Yeah,
Really
they
glad.
didn't go overboard with it. With season 2, it felt like they did what needed for the story.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't super huge. It took place in a very short period of time with a very limited pool of characters. And it just finished that story. And it was good. It was a little existential. It was interesting. It was great.
It was. So I do recommend that one, Luce. I reckon you should watch. If you have to watch anything, watch Loki. And I think it also would appeal to you in a way because it's clever and thoughtful and a bit quirky, and like it's definitely not your standard MCU just CG nonsense kind of thing. Like it's doing some other more playful things that are a good entry point to people who don't just mindlessly consume Marvel. I count myself as among those people who mindlessly consume Marvel. So yeah.
And Owen Wilson is great in it.
Yeah,
Wow.
he is actually. He's a real comfort factor, isn't he? Like
Yeah,
he's
he
just it's just nice to see him there doing his very chilled out things. That's good.
That's very sweet. Yeah. Okay. I'll put it on my list for you.
Sure. Good.
But,
Excellent.
I am watching 20 seasons of How It's Made.
Well,
right now,
that's
so.
obviously goes without saying that's the priority.
Sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, last night I learned how ice buckets are made. So I'm
We're
pretty
really knocking over the
busy.
important things.
I learned how paint dries.
Oh god.
Has anyone been playing anything else? Or we're straight into show and tell, I guess.
I want to hear about Hades.
Yeah, I also.
Oh,
want to
yeah.
hear Hades.
Hades is so I put about 10 hours into that again on the flight. So the flight there was Loki, and the flight back was just nonstop Hades, actually, on my Steam Deck. And I wish I had more to say about it, but all I can say is that it's consistently excellent,
Mm-hmm.
that it feels like more Hades. For me, I think it feels a little too similar in a way that I'm not like truly excited to step back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm like, oh man, they've really done some stuff here. It's like, hell yeah. It's just like, okay, cool. This is definitely out there. I'm excited to eventually play it when the time comes. As in, I'm looking forward to playing it when the time comes. But so much of it felt so familiar that I am not like really loving it like the first game. You know, right? And I kind of feel this way when Supergiant announced they were making Hades 2. I was like, oh, okay, all right. You know, like I really felt like you've just nailed it with Hades 1. You could probably incrementally improve, which it seems like that's what they've done here. But I would kind of be really interested in you guys making a whole new thing, you know, which is a thing we will come back to when we talk about Furiosa. But in broad strokes, it's good. I like it. I don't think you need to jump in and play it right now, because if the memory of Hades 1 is still fresh in your mind, and it probably is fresh for all of us, then you're going to step back into this. It's going to feel very familiar, and then you'll play it, and then you're going to have to come back to it again for when the 1.0 happens. I think you're better off just waiting for that 1.0 release. More time will have elapsed since Hades 1. Maybe you'll be a bit hungrier for it then. The entire content offering will be available. You'll go through it all in, 20 to 40 hours, however long you spend with it, and you'll feel good about it. But yes, I do wish Supergiant had made something different, because I don't necessarily think we needed another Hades game. Yeah, I don't think we did, to be honest. And I haven't seen that commentary anywhere else. Like, I think most people are like, yeah, this is rules. It's super good. It's great. It's fantastic. Because Austin reviewed it for the channel, and Austin really loved it. And he really loved its incremental improvements and feels like they've more than justified themselves as their own offering and what have you. Fair enough. But as I was playing it, I was like, all right, cool. I played my 10 hours, park it, come back at 1.0, but it's not like I'm desperate to return to it. I'll put it this way. I enjoyed Rogue Prince of Persia more than Hades 2, even though I would say Hades 2 is a better video game with more content and far more polish and whatever else. But Rogue Prince of Persia, just in terms of its raw combat, felt different and new and different. And I'm like, I haven't experienced this before. It feels a little bit like Dead Cells, but there's a lot that's different, so much so that I felt like, oh, cool, great, this is nice. Whereas with Hades, too much of it is similar to me. And so I'm like, cool, this is all very well made, nice, but, still feels like Hades. Makes sense?
Yeah,
It
that
does.
can happen sometimes.
Yeah.
At certain
Yeah.
times. Yeah.
I didn't I liked Hades, but I didn't like fall in love with it as much as a lot of other people did. And so I haven't gone into Hades 2 just yet. I was actually waiting maybe for a flight, because it just feels like a good flight game. So maybe to see if Hades 2 will change my mind.
It runs like black magic on the Steam Deck, by the way, like
Ooh.
locked 90 FPS. It's just incredible. And it's just so smooth and technically flawless. And the benefit of it is that it's, the same engine and same assets and similar assets and whatever else. There's a huge amount of technical momentum that they've got from the previous game that you just carry over, and they've also taken their time with it, and so it's incredibly polished and it feels wonderful to play. Like you pick it up and you're playing a really beautifully made lovingly crafted game that, you know, from a team of absolute professionals and perfectionists. And so there's a lot of comfort in that as well, for sure.
Lovely. Well, time for show and tell then, which is where we talk about something that is not a video game. Are you both picking the same thing?
We should pick different things.
Yeah. Well, Jake, I'll go to you first then. You've seen... Oh, unless hang on, who wants to talk about it? Because you've both seen the same thing.
I can talk about something else.
Okay.
All right.
I feel like such a school teacher there. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay, everyone get
It's fine. We're happy to be managed, Lucy. That's fine.
Yeah, no.
Get your snacks. Make sure you got your buddy. Okay, Jake, what have you seen?
Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
How
It's
is
a good
it?
time.
I'm going tomorrow. So
Okay. Are you seeing IMAX?
all I know about the plans is I'm going tomorrow.
Okay,
I'm not
cool.
sure.
Fair enough.
I will see. I think we're going to the place where there is an IMAX, so I will.
Okay.
I will inquire.
Cool.
It's a good time at the movies. Totally. I am obsessed with Fury Road. I have been since it first released, and it's very hard not to compare to it. It's a different type of movie. It wants to tell a different type of story, structured a different way, but I can't help but compare it, and I think Fury Road is just way, way better. This movie actually disappointed me in some ways. I felt like some of the action, some of the music, some of that punchiness just wasn't quite there. But I still liked the lore, the world building, the expansion stuff. I didn't necessarily need it from Fury Road. I like how Fury Road just kind of trickled it in and let weirdos like me find the comic books and listen to George Miller interviews and stuff and fill in the blanks. But here it gives you a lot of that. My problem is that I think for me going in is like I was already kind of exposed to that world more. I sought it out more. I played the video game like 2-3 times. So I had kind of already gotten a taste of like, oh, Gastown, Bullet Farm, cool. I'm already like in. So now to have a movie that just kind of like, you know, shows the little ins and outs of these factions, it didn't like absolutely blow me away. I still think like compared to a lot of other action movies I've seen lately, like it's awesome. It's still centered around weird freaks and crazy set pieces and perverts and goons and like all this weird shit in
That's
the
what
desert.
it's like down here.
That's apparently, and now we really know that it's in Australia.
Yeah,
Thanks
we
to an
really
establishing
know.
shot.
He
Thanks,
made
George.
sure of that.
Oh.
It's like it's fucking Australia. Chris Hemsworth is entertaining to watch. He is a interesting Mad Max villain because he's got that like, you know, thing where you look and you're like, what's going on with this guy? What's his deal? And you can never really pin him down. He's kind of like ineffective in a lot of ways, but he's like handsome and buff and crazy, but he doesn't really do anything. And it was kind of interesting.
With a big fake nose.
And also an accent. Like he's got like a nasally, like old timey Australian accent. Am I like, it sounds very like,
no, he kind of just has a Australian accent.
You guys sound like that?
He just,
It sounds like he's playing it up. Like he sounds like an older man.
A little bit. Like he's leaning into a little bit, but he's not that far off.
It was charming though. I liked it.
He's not like, g'day mates. Like he's not doing these ones, but he's definitely got probably like if the Australian accent is neutral 5, he's probably like sitting at the 6.57 mark. He's not sitting at the hammed up like 10 out of 10 mark. That's for sure.
Okay, good. He was cool though. I like the biker gang thing. Okay, what you don't?
Yeah, see, I actually think he was like the biggest weak. No, that's it, and because I think Immortan Joe is less a character and more a vehicle for intent. You know, like Immortan Joe is just stares at things and kind of just makes things happen, right? And he just wants a son, and he's gonna go and find Furiosa. That's it. Whereas this guy is an actual character in the sense that he's got like foibles and he's got a lot more dialogue, and you know, like he's more fleshed out. But he's also just way more confused. And yeah, and I know like there's definitely 2 ways to read his character, which is, I guess we don't want to spoil it too much because Lucy hasn't seen it yet. But there's different ways to interpret his character. And he can either seem really messy and confused on purpose, or it's maybe just like, well, you didn't really specify exactly how we should receive him. Like I don't know as an audience what they want me to feel about this guy, really.
He's
and maybe
the villain,
that's the
but he never felt threatening.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and in a world of such threatening figures, it just seems implausible that he would be able to maintain his position in that society.
Yeah, it didn't last long. I mean,
well, we won't spoil it again.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the whole thing just felt so. I don't know. I don't know that it needed to be made.
no.
You say that you say that it's cool to see Bullet Farm and Gastown, and in a way, I feel like it's not cool to see those things.
I do agree. Less is usually more.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think some of the genius of Fury Road was just like, here's some stuff that we're going to talk about but never show. Or if we show this random shot of something, we're never going to explain it.
Like
those
stilt
dudes
guys.
on the stilt.
What's
the
their
stilt
fucking
guys.
deal?
Exactly. Now, if Furiosa doesn't deal with the stilts guys, right? But it does deal with some other things that in the same way. It explains that thing and it shows you things that you just lived in your imagination before. And in a way, I think it kind of, this is probably going to be a very unpopular take, but I think Furiosa makes Fury Road less, right? Because now I have an image in my mind of what those things are when they talk about them. Fury Road, I think, was and still is perfect. It's just perfect. Like, there's not an ounce of fat on it. It is every single character, the dialogue, the casting, like their place in the universe, just everything is so fucking flawless. What would you change about that film? Nothing. And whereas this one, it's kind of like, there's a bit of a problem, and there's the villain thing and the plot and it's just messy. And I had a good time, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Because the other thing people say is like, oh, it's a very different film. And I'm like, is it a very different film? I don't think that it is. I think just because it has a bit more plot and some more dialogue, it's still ultimately based upon like 4 or 5 big long action sequences that are just less impressive than Fury Road's.
Yeah.
So I actually don't think this is a vastly different film. And I think it's being positioned as that. But I don't think that it is. I just think it's a more messy version of Fury Road that didn't really need to be made.
Yeah, like I do think I think it is different in terms of we have scenes, and it's not spoiling anything, but like we have scenes of like these characters from the previous movies hashing things out and like talking like, we're going to make a deal. You do this, I do that.
Yes.
And I like just didn't really need that. I wasn't very interested, and it makes some of those characters having those conversations less mysterious.
Correct.
Right now they're just like a thing.
Yeah, because there was this primal energy that ran through Fury Road where like only strength and action and outcome mattered, right?
Yeah.
And whereas in this one, it introduces you to like political powers and conniving mischievery, and which is fine, I guess. But there was just such beautiful simplicity in Fury Road, and it's so much more muddled here without providing any payoff. Like if you were going to go down this road, but no pun intended, and then like nail it, I'd be like, all right, cool. You've shown me a different side of this universe that's so much more interesting. Whereas really, you just kind of showed me some stuff that I had to imagine, but now I've seen it, and the way you showed it to me didn't really work for me personally. You know what I mean? So, yeah, and her like companion, the other like Praetorian.
Oh, Praetorian Jack. Yo, he's just Mad Max.
He's just Mad Max, but it's just anyway. We won't spoil this, but like
I'll be in the Discord when I come out tomorrow night.
Totally, but again, that's such a perfect example of like, what's the deal with you, man? Like, why are you in this movie at this point? And like, what's going on here? And it's I don't know. And look, I know there's all sorts of different counters to this and perspective. This is just my personal perspective, how I responded to it, and it really has made. I've been obsessed with finding the 3 hours I need to sit down and watch Fury Road again. I'm desperate to watch that film again because, in a weird way, Furiosa left my brain kind of going, and then I just want Fury Road to like set me straight. Yeah. And then when I want to watch Fury Road, I'm gonna be like, thank you. Okay, that's how it should be. Yes. I'm okay now. You know what I mean? Like, it really does make me feel that way.
It was the energy. It was like nothing in it had. So a lot of it, like some of the scenes, I'm like, okay, like I feel like we had a scene like that in Fury Road, but a little better. Like it didn't have the energy. The scene, the Fury Road, like war rig versus the dirt bikes. and they're
Yes.
cocking pistols and the music is like pumping. There's no point in Furiosa that made me feel like that and be like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, because they have another war rig scene, but it's so much smaller in scale. Like the other war rig scene is like this fucking massive armada of shit, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, man, how did you do this? And this one, you're like, oh, they fly now. So
that was the other thing. The visuals were rough for me.
I was going to ask about like green screen and
some of it looks really bad. But
the one
also
where he's like driving and like ramming the gate, and it's just like, it's so
fake.
Green screened. It's so fake that it looks almost comical. There was one time, did you see the girls walking down the staircase one time? And she was like glitching on the staircase. Like she was like kind of almost like she was like a hologram, like kind of, it looked like bad, like North Korean Photoshop.
There's a lot of
like
wiggly, bendy CGI. Like that, like anytime somebody would peel away or do a jump on a dirt bike, like they'd like be like a wiggly CGI person. And I'm like, oh.
I agree. And like the first film did have CG for sure, but this one just had a lot more, and it was noticeable, and it looked kind of amateurish at times, and it definitely took me out in a way.
Lord of the Rings versus The Hobbit.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And I think that's a good parallel.
That's really good.
Because we didn't need The Hobbit.
No.
But we got it. But that was also a lot more cynical, because they're like, let's make 3 movies out of this when it should have been. If you made 1 Hobbit movie, maybe 2, it's like, okay, cool. But you really took the piss with 3. This is not like that. Yeah. This is not cynical. He clearly just wanted to make this story.
I think Furiosa's better than the Hobbit.
Oh, for sure. But it's the same idea of like, did we need this? I don't think so. And it's impossible. Yeah, I don't think this was trying to be different enough from Fury Road. If you really wanted to make a different type of film, I would have been really interested to see that, but I don't. I think this is the same film again, or too similar, and you cannot improve on perfection, because Fury Road is actually perfect. Like, actually perfect.
I hope he's got one more in him.
Babe.
Me
Pig
too.
in the desert.
Me too. What is he, 80? He's 80 now?
79, 80, I think.
Yeah, he's up there.
That's it. Maybe you reckon Kojima will make the Mad Max game that Miller wants him to?
When he saw that, he probably called him immediately.
Yeah, he did. He's like, I'll do it.
Fucking Mad Max game came out the same day as...
That's unfair. And I wonder, it'd be a cool piece of content.
Yeah.
It would be a cool piece of content. I tell you what someone should do. Someone with some reach. So like call up George Miller and like go and play the game with him, sit down with him and explain to him why it's actually a good game. And then he could be like, oh, okay. Well, because clearly he doesn't know what a video game is, like, because he was mouthing off. But the background to this is like, he put out a statement or a little quote being like, the Mad Max game, it didn't turn out quite as well as we would have liked. You know what I mean? But there's a bunch of people that really hold a candle for that game, Jake included. So all of this is saying, Jake, you should call George Miller and offer to show him that game and why it's good. And that would be a cool piece of content.
How do I say hello in Australian?
We already established this, Jake. At the very beginning of this segment, we did the "G'day, mate." Just do that, and you're in. Okay.
He'll love you for it.
Yeah.
So that's Furiosa. I will chime in with my opinions on it next episode.
Excited.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about Interview with the Vampire. Have I told you guys about this show before?
It's the show, right?
It's the show.
It's not the movie. It's not the movie.
No, they are making a show of it. It's on its 2nd season, and it is phenomenal.
Oh,
like,
all right.
It's on AMC, which is probably why no one is talking about it or watches it.
Sure.
Because it's not The Walking Dead. So I can't remember why I started watching it when it first came out. But I watched it. It was like one of those rare shows that I would watch weekly, and I became obsessed with it. It is a retelling of Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire, because they were trying to make the Anne Rice connected universe. I think it is still part of it, because they had
the ACU.
They had the the witches of whatchamacallit with Alexandra Daddario. I didn't watch that one because, let's face it, she's very attractive, but she is not too hot vampires. That's where I landed. It is. Do you remember Grey Worm in Game of Thrones?
Yes, of course.
So he plays Louis, and there's an Australian actor named Sam Reed who plays Lestat. And when I tell you that this show doesn't have the right to be this good. Like the
Okay.
way that it's written, it is written firmly tongue in cheek. It is sexy. It is funny. And I think when it comes to playing a character like Lestat, who is camp, over the top, seductive, dangerous, like that is a mad mix of things that a character has to embody, like sexy, alluring, the most dangerous.
Astarion.
Essentially, well, let's not get into Astarion versus Lestat because I genuinely think like fandom wars have been fought on that. But
Sure.
to be able to play a character that embodies all of that is so difficult without coming off as super super cheesy. And the guy who plays Lestat just does it effortlessly, and like he genuinely, as a viewer, you are kind of where Louis is, and every time he's on screen, you are just like glued to this character. So season 1 is all about, you know, like finding Claudia, turning their life in New Orleans. Season 2 is they have charged the battery pack for my camera that is plugged in.
Oh my god.
I'll keep talking.
That's fine. That's fine. Just to placeholder Lucy image over there, Stu.
Please
it's fine.
pick a nice one.
Yeah.
So season 2 is they are in Europe. Oh, there we go. And they and we are with Armand and the Théâtre de Vampire, and they're in Paris, and it's like
Fancy.
post war torn Europe, and it's, you know, getting involved in the coven and you know, like vampires have their own rules, their own laws. And these 2 American vampires getting involved with the Europeans. It's just really good. I love it so much. And it's, you know, that joke in Arrested Development when Arrested Development was getting cancelled and they do the voiceover where it's like, please tell your friends about this show. That's me with Interview with the Vampire, because I do not want it to get cancelled. And I'm not saying that like I don't think it's indicating that that's going to happen, but it's like, it's just really good. And I tell all my friends, like, if you like period dramas, if you just like weirdly, because I this season of Bridgerton is not doing it for me, and this is absolutely like just a way more enthralling period piece. Obviously, it's about vampires, so
yeah, because it's got vampires in it.
It's got vampires in it, but it's great in terms of like, you know, the Queen of the Damned movie was an experience. The old Interview with the Vampire movie was great, but very you know, kind of dated now. And then Queen of the Damned was, I mean, Aaliyah, God rest her soul, she carried. Carried, but the rest of it was bizarre. This is like, in terms of an adaptation that really understands the source material, but also firmly understands the fandom around the source material, I think it's doing a lot, and I really, really enjoy it. And it's on AMC, and I'm paying $9 a month just to watch this damn show. So
oh my god, you have to pay for AMC?
Yeah.
I would have thought AMC is just a free channel. What the fuck? You pay for that shit?
But I'm also watching Mad Men as well, so it's like,
oh, nice.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
So that's me.
Yeah, right.
Ralph, what about you?
Oh, okay. Okay. Brief shout out. Watch Poor Things.
Yeah.
Very good film.
I loved it, but I don't want to.
Loved it.
I don't want to have.
I don't want to talk about it too much.
About it.
But I will say Mark Ruffalo in it is unbelievable. Like, I had no idea he was that funny and talented as an actor. He's actually hilarious. He just completely crushes in that movie. Like, she won Best Actress for that role, and I can get it. But at the same time, I was like, did he get a nomination for that? I feel like he deserves some recognition because he was just that good in every scene. And so that was cool. But a little bit offbeat. I read a comic book. I read something called Batman 89.
Oh, yeah, you read the whole thing?
I read the whole thing, yeah.
What'd
I
you
read
think?
the trade. It's, first of all, I think it's actually, okay, so the background to Batman 89 is they, like, imagine, you know, the movies from, like, you know, Michael Keaton Batman movies. They take the faces and the setting and the costumes and the Batmobile or whatever, and then they continue that story on, right? It's written by different people, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But it's basically like, let's take the artifacts of Batman 89 and continue that story in the modern era in a comic book, right? Correct me if I'm wrong about any of that, Jake.
Yep,
you might know
like
better
you
than I do.
but it continues some of the concepts that they were going to do, like Harvey Dent is that Harvey
okay,
Dent
exactly.
eventually becomes
Sam-
Two-Face. Like
Sam Hamm, Batman Returns.
Oh, he wrote that, and he also wrote this?
Batman 89 book 1, I believe
Okay, cool,
so.
great. So there you go. It's a continuation, and I really enjoyed it. I really did, but it doesn't feel remotely like Batman '89.
No.
Totally different in terms of its tone and themes, because it's a very politically driven story about like politics and race, economics in the city of Gotham. It's very well written, and I actually really liked that story a lot. And I was like, damn, okay, yeah, this is tapping into some cool ideas about like corruption in the city and, you know, like race relations and all sorts of things. I was like, all right, I'm into this storyline, I'm down for it. But at the same time, I was also like, okay, but this is not actually what Batman '89 was remotely like. It was this kind of carnival show almost of like ridiculous, silly characters, and it was gothic and weird and whatever. So I met it with a mixed reception, because again, I was glad for that story, and because I don't read a lot of Batman, and I was actually really glad to have read this Batman because I liked its rendition of Gotham and all its powerful forces and what it was doing with the characters. But I was also felt a little bit jibbed because I was like, oh, but that's not really what '89 was like at all. I would have liked to have seen some of that. Do you know what I mean? Did you read it, Jake? Have you read it?
I never finished it, but I like the art. I really like the
art's
art.
Fantastic.
I liked how like there were so many like little references and Easter eggs like trickled throughout it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's something I would finish, but yeah, I'm kind of with you.
Yeah, exactly. So but it's cool though. It's like in trade paperback now. I got the hardcover.
It's not too long.
There's also it's really short. Yeah. And there's also like a new there's a run at the moment like Batman '89 Echoes, which I think is like maybe focused on Catwoman, I think. I'm not sure. So I'll grab that as well. But I've just had a really nice time reading it. I mean, it's really, as I said, really short, very easy to get through. So I do recommend checking it out, but like just going with the right expectations about that sort of thing. And yeah, that's it. That's my show and tell outside of Furiosa.
Lovely. Well, that's another episode of the Prince Per Second podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you've been watching or listening, if you would like to go, if you liked the show and you want to rate it 5 stars on iTunes or Spotify, that would be great. And we'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
That'd be lovely.
Uber drivers be like, 5 stars, please. 5 stars.
That's right.
Here's a bottle of water for you.
Would you like? That's right. Would you like some mints? I'm good, thank you. Charges are right there. Okay, thanks, man.
I went in one of those like posh Ubers the other day. You know, you can set it so it's like you can set your
the black ones.
Yeah, you can set your temperature, and you can also say if you want the driver to speak to you or not. And I was like,
that's
I don't like
default.
that. I don't like that.
That's not the fancy ones. That's default does that too.
Nuh-uh, not over here. Does it?
In Australia, it is. Yeah.
Wow.
It is. Yeah.
Oh, fancy pants over in Australia. Damn. No,
That's right.
I've never had it unless you get like an Uber Black over here. But then I was too awkward to say, don't talk to me, even though I don't talk.
Even though the app where you wanted like to be rude.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
But anyway,
Sure.
if we'll be back again in a couple weeks from LA in-person episode.
We will
Summer
do that.
Gamefest.
It's gonna be a big show. We're excited about it. So
Yeah.
yes. Please look forward to it.
Please be excited, some might
Please
say.
look. Yeah, exactly. That's right.
You can find me on Twitter, at least James Games. Ralph?
I'm around.
Broken man.
I'm around. You'll find me. It's all good.
Yeah, same. I'm out there.
You're around. Follow me on Twitter. I don't care. I'm still pushing for. I'm pushing
Follow
for my
me.
visa, man. I gotta prove that I'm a big deal. Anyway, Jake, take us home.
Folks, we'll see you at Summer Game Fest. Tie your shoes and go to bed.